And we are live. What is up, YouTube? I am joined today with special guest Michael Schratt, and we are going to be discussing UFO cases and also some current events. Before we get started, though, I want to correct something from the last stream. I always like to correct any kind of mistakes or errors that happen in the UFO research process that we do here. This man, we thought that that UFO CIA anonymous guy, and that an anonymous interview with the CIA deathbed confession. Maybe Dan's actually here too. He can comment on this. Who was it, Dan, that contacted Richard's daughter and
Steve, or not Steve, another guy did.
It was another guy. So yeah, this didn't end up. We contacted this guy's family, and she said she understands where someone could have mistaken the resemblance. This guy did do military service. He was the same age and from the same area, and died around the same time, which is how we found him, by doing research into that case. But
well, somebody told me too. They're like, that's not the right guy.
It's not the right guy. This is not anonymous.
Popular show. He knew right away. He said that's not him. So.
We're gonna dig up who anonymous is. Let me. This was sorry. I was watching Demi Lovato's interview with Stephen Greer. Did you see that, guys?
I did not see that.
It was really interesting. I have some questions about what some of the things that Stephen Greer is alleging is true. So I'm going to be doing a deep dive on UFO technologies. I posted a tweet on Twitter about what UFO technologies people thought about, but I mean, what a list. I wanted to make a list of all the technologies that people have alleged were back engineered from UFOs, and then I want to really research the scientists who worked on them, and try to put together an accurate summary of that history, from as best, try to take both sides of the case and build a case for each side. Is there any technology out there that we could legitimately build a case that it was reverse engineered from extraterrestrials? So
into UFOs, is that what that was all about?
But this was the anonymous interview. This was the guy we were talking about before, who we were trying to. Have we figured out his name yet, Dan?
Cooper. Yeah, it's a we got it.
It's Cooper Stein.
Well, no, that's what he calls himself. That's what Linda Howe kind of called him.
Yeah.
Stein, Stein, but that's not his real name. His real name, if you have his real name, you can see what his military background is and stuff. And it's something that can't go out just yet. There's a reason for that. The other name was something that came up several years ago, and boy, that sure looked like him. I'm like, does he have 2, 3 names?
Yeah, I thought that was funny, and the name stuck out in my mind because of course his name was Dick Manlove. And
yeah, so I'm like, no wonder
how can you forget that? But it's not the same guy.
What happened was Linda Howe trying to say that he used a fake name when he was in the military to cover up his CIA identity. It's gotten very squirrely. So there are several freaking names attached to this guy. Good luck, finding the real one's the question. Which guy is he? There's 3 names we've got so far. And she threw that whole thing in there about him using a false name while he's in the Army, which I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, that seems a little weird, man.
Enter the Army in basic training under a fake name, they would toss you out like that, And remember, he supposedly got hired by.
They don't even do that with intelligence, people in intelligence, even in the deepest parts of intelligence.
Claims he taught at the Signal Training Center or whatever. That after he did his test, he was one of 5 guys that had great test results, and then he started doing training for the agency. And, so it was backwards. I mean, it went forward the right way. So he would have never entered the Army with the using the false identity, because he's in the Army first, then supposedly gets hired by the CIA. So, again.
Yeah, we're digging into this guy. Don't worry. We already did some digging into him before, but we're going to find out his real name and who he was. And,
me and Ed spent a lot of time on this guy, and Ed and Richard Dolan had a conversation, and I was right there. So I saw what Richard Dolan said. I'm going to put it in a report for this channel.
I actually reached out to Richard today, and he got back to me, and we're going to talk privately, I think, next week. And
no reason to hammer Richard over this.
No.
Not, look, this was something that was thrown on him by Linda Howe. Ron Garner was involved. Michael Schratt, you've worked with Ron Garner already.
Mhm.
Ron passed away in 2015, 2016. If you don't know, Ron Garner put a number of videos out. One Mike Schratt was in. And Ron was just a genuine UFO researcher, and it was his passion, and he had money, and he spent that money on UFO research now, didn't he, Michael? Ron was behind the financial end of it. Linda Moulton Howe had been talking to this man known as Cooper Stein in the late 90s, and he claimed he was assaulted in a grocery store by two agents in a black Lincoln Town car. And then after that had happened, he was told he wasn't allowed to talk to Linda anymore. And as you two guys know, as we all hung out down in West Virginia, yes, if they don't get the blood to work, get the blood filtered, it's not going to work. The whole thing is, the premise is the guy's dying. He is not in good shape. Let's face it.
Yeah, he's not.
They're in a hotel room. He walks in the hotel room and sits on the recliner. So,
well, this is exactly what we were all expecting, and and there is some of this that happened after with the Roswell witnesses, towards the end of their lives and stuff. But everyone's expecting that that old agent guy to come forward and spill all the beans, So it was perfectly placed.
10, 12 million views. You got to remember this guy here. He took some Dan Burrish and topped it off with a little bit of Bob Lazar sauce.
Wow, nice.
He's got the Dan Burrish story, the Bob Lazar story. He's at S4 supposedly. Opened a garage door up, and there was the Roswell craft was sitting there demolished. There was an alien in the one garage door, and that's where it gets interesting. And he claims Eisenhower sent him down there to throw everyone out of Area 51. Michael, he claims this happened in 1958. Wasn't much going on at Area 51 in 58. We had the U-2 program was going on in 58. He claims that they had a full model mock-up of the SR-71 Blackbird there. It would have been the A-12, but that didn't come till 62, right?
Yeah, well done. Yeah, well done.
62. So he was 4 years early on the A-12 SR-71. There's no way they had an SR-71 sitting there in 58. No way. A U-2, yeah, you would have the U-2 sitting there. But that new bird, that Blackbird, believe me, that would have left an impression on him you never would have forgot. Because
that's true.
When you see one of those, imagine seeing one of them in 58. You would be like, oh my God, what's going on? I mean, today, I still think it's the most fascinating aircraft we've ever made. What do you think, Michael? It's up there.
Well, it's right up there with the XB-70.
I want to play something from actually, guys. I want to play a quick clip, right? So this was from Kurt Jamungal, Kurt Theories of Everything, just a couple days ago. He interviewed Richard Dolan. It's already got over 100,000 views, man. This was good stuff. But right at 59 minutes,
began this technique over 200 years ago. It's nothing new. So that exists. So I don't want to encourage paranoia here, but the fact is that we don't know who all these people are. So when you're talking about a community that is at war with itself, and
sorry.
True.
So watch this.
And
this is the part.
They will gravitate to UFOs, and some of those people are brilliant, but sometimes they can get really worked up. They're not all psychologically stable. I mean, that's unfortunately the case. And
no.
So I think that's part of it, and it's also true. Look, there are bots. Never, ever underestimate the power of the intelligence community to screw up a field. Don't we all remember
there are
Snowden?
bots? What do you mean? You said there are bots. As in
social engineering bots.
Yeah, fake people. We remember Snowden's revelations weren't that long ago. It was less than 10 years ago. And one of the things we learned from Snowden is that troll farms exist. GCHQ of the UK, that's their NSA. And I think the NSA itself, I think it came out they insert them. They have people on the payroll who pretend to be normal, genuine people, except they're not. They may have 10 different persona that they'll go around and just trash talk in various communities that they want to disrupt. Shit, the FBI was doing this with COINTELPRO back in the 1960s. You'd have people going in and infiltrating groups. Hoover was all over this. This is an old game. You have agents provocateurs. Joseph Fouché, back under Napoleon, began this technique over 200 years ago. It's nothing new. So
you hear that?
And Ed's grandfather?
That's Joseph Fouché under Napoleon. So let's go to, if you go to Ed.
He did that on purpose.
He did that on purpose. He threw that in there. Did you catch that?
Joseph is how you spell his grandfather's name.
That was interesting that he threw that in there, man.
1998 presentation within the first 20 minutes of the presentation.
Yeah, so if you go right to the first beginning of the presentation,
that was a jab, Richard. Ow.
That was a jab, man. He's saying, because we've wondered about Ed for years, man. I've gone back and forth personally on Ed for years, man. And
Ed contacted, I was there. Ed contacted Dolan on UFO. They were talking. I was involved. I was part of the conversation. He had asked Richard Dolan what in the hell was the story with the anonymous guy, and Ed and I worked on that debunk for a couple weeks. You remember? And Richard Dolan pushed the thing off, blaming it on Corbell, saying that he forced the video to come out. He wasn't sure of the story yet, and this and that. I was there, and that is probably a hit because let's face it, the debunk that Ed did on that anonymous guy was amazing. You know, Ed did 75% of it. I did 25% of it.
Ed taught us so much about the real way intelligence worked and the real way, the real stuff. Though, like, I don't know, man, if he was an intelligence agent, why did he teach us so much shit?
Ed was so smart. What people don't understand is Ed was brilliant, and a lot of people caught Ed at the latter stages of his life. He was in incredible pain. He had major heart surgery. His back was operated on 6 times. He was full of blood clots. They went through his brain, his heart, everything. I know. I watched Ed darn near die and recover. And that last day we spoke, he didn't make it to the next day. And we spoke for 5 hours the last day of his life. It was as if someone from above empowered this to happen. I'll never ever forget it. But that was a jab at Ed because Ed's paperwork put a hurting on Richard. Story. I just think it's funny, of all the people he picks out, Joseph Fouché. I had never heard of Joseph Fouché ever. Have you ever heard of Joseph Fouché? If it
was in Ed's, here it is on Ed Fouché98.html. When Ed sent me all his slides from his presentation, here it is right here. And here's his caption on Joseph Fouché, the Duke, as far back as the French Revolution, where Joseph Fouché was the prime minister under Napoleon. He was the head of the French secret national police force and a direct ancestor of Ed Fouché's. Joseph Fouché started and controlled the world's first professionally organized intelligence agency with agents throughout Europe. That's fascinating that was Ed's grandfather.
Well, now it says a relative. Maybe it wasn't his grandfather. I don't know.
Well, we got to figure out how the lineage. We should do a family tree on Ed sometime, man, and maybe and trace that back. That would be cool.
I'll ask his daughter tomorrow.
Well, and on that note, it's about time for me to crack a beer, and I've chosen a Guinness because this is some heavy stuff tonight.
Hey, I've got watermelon lemonade.
There you go,
Michael.
Nothing for me.
What's that, buddy?
Nothing for me.
Okay.
Water.
Yeah.
Michael doesn't drink. Michael doesn't eat or drink. We didn't even see him eat or drink once while we're on vacation. I think we're convinced he's an alien.
Sandwiches with lettuce.
He's either that or he's from California. We said, right?
Yeah, you can tell he's from California. Or he was living there.
Anyways, good stuff. Michael, I'm going to let you get started on what you came here to present tonight. Well, before we take up any more time, man. And
okay.
By the way, welcome.
Yeah, great.
I'm going to share your screen. Welcome to the club. And I got a couple other people we invited to, so we can get on with some information in a little bit. So I'm going to add your presentation over here. If you click that, see that where it says StreamYard sharing your screen, you can click that hide button. It will hide that little
hide
thing.
button. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and then you can full screen it. Alt Enter, I think, or I don't know.
Just want to say, anybody watching is in for a treat. Michael kicks butt. It's always awesome to. I still got this, Michael. Check this out. I keep it
What's
right
that?
Right here. Right here, my friend. I'll never forget when you handed me this.
Oh,
Jeremy, you got one too.
Oh, we got a super chat, man. Praise the cash. $5 from Harry Toe. Is the SR-72 Mach 6 in production?
we don't know.
We don't know. I do not have any
Michael?
inside intel on that. So.
All this information. I have all this.
Oh yeah, the
Remember
folder.
all the identifications.
That looks, yeah, that looks about right.
I'm gonna put all that in a big document drive, and I'm gonna drop it off at my senator's office.
It's everything. It's everything. You know, it's just it was there's some such cool drawings. Like, look at this. This is the UFO over Illinois wave, if you will. Look at that drawing I got. You know, let me.
Oh yeah.
I was upside down. And I love that drawing because that's my favorite one. I think that's the most accurate.
Yeah, sure.
That was from a police officer. Here we have, you know, if you ever want to see some of these triangles, they have, as Michael always says, pipes, girders, and tubes construction.
Correct.
Whatever, Michael.
Yes.
We know that's man-made stuff when there's pipes, tubes, and girders, and we just know that because we don't think ETs would use rivets.
Right.
So here's another thing too. I invited Taryn to the chat too, so he could come and join. He runs our database right now for a shared a giant Google Drive folder of like all our community shared data, and I want to put a folder in here with all this stuff too. For Michael Schratt, I want to put a folder in there for you, Michael, and start. Michael has one of the biggest databases of. Tell us about your how much data you have on UFOs. I mean, we're going to go over some new cases tonight, but we have a whole Alexandria project pretty much that we have to do to digitize or make backups of all the files that you have, Michael. Is that correct?
Well, we have enough cases to last us till the next ice age. So,
oh, jeez.
Yeah, plenty of material.
That is a true statement.
Yep, there's enough. I mean, just the fact of the auto binders that all of us were involved in. There's over 300 cases there, and those cases have been seen since like 1965. Those cases have been completely off the radar screen. There's some good material in those cases.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got stuff that's amazing. That and this is stuff that people have never seen, never.
Yeah, why don't you bring up that presentation? Let's dig into this, man.
All right, why don't we? Okay, so can you all see this?
Yep.
Okay.
See that.
So since you mentioned Roswell a little bit earlier, I thought it'd be a good idea to put together a clear and decisive map on what actually took place here. Now, this is July 2nd, 1947. And most people talk about the impact site that's about 35 to 40 miles north of Roswell. Well, that really isn't the origin point of how everything got going here. If you look off to the left, you'll see this notation that I have, debris field 65 miles northwest of Roswell. Even that is not the beginning point. The beginning point is actually 5 miles north of that location, something called the touchdown site, and that is where Lewis Rickert.
Can you full screen that? I want to be able to read those signs.
Okay, let me go to slideshow, and I'll go here, and then I guess we could zip down. We can zip down. We'll go through all this.
That was stuff we went over on last episode, right? The last
couple of them.
Yeah, there's some new stuff in there too that I'm seeing.
Oh yeah.
Oh geez.
We got you covered here, brother. We got you covered. We haven't even touched the. Okay, so here we are, right here, right. Okay. The other thing too is, now I work with Don Schmidt on this. This is all verified and authenticated by Don Schmidt. I've got the entire breakdown, what happened each day starting July 2nd, 1947, 11:59 p.m. Not going to go through all of these, but just to let you know that we have the timeline completely vetted and pinned down all the way to the moving of everything to right field. So here's where I want to start right here. So If you look at the arrow that says debris field, and then you go 5 miles north, you've got what's called the touchdown point or the touchdown site. That's where Louis Rickett and Lincoln La Paz, they discovered fused glass that could only be done by high heat. They also, gentlemen, I don't know if you were aware of this, they also found a seamless black box that was about 10 inches long, 6 inches high, 8 inches wide, completely seamless. And to this day, we don't know if anyone was able to open it. We have no clue, but that was recovered there, and it's almost never talked about.
Wow.
So the trajectory then is from the northwest to the southeast. So you can see the flight path that I've drawn here. Keep following the arrows, and you'll get to the impact site. Now, we know that there were 5 bodies recovered, and 1 was still alive. So at the impact site or crash site, they recovered an egg-shaped craft, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. 2 bodies were recovered here. 1 was living, and this is 35 miles or 40 miles north of Roswell. Now, approximately 2.5 miles west of the impact site is the second body site. That's where at least another 2 were recovered. And so that's kind of the setting, how we want to begin this presentation here, just to have a map, an overall bird view map of what actually took place and what we're talking about. Okay, so I want to move forward. And this is the little bit of a surprise I have for you gentlemen here. I guess you could call it a world exclusive. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but this is a photograph that was given to me by Don Schmidt. This is the actual impact site. Happened July 2nd, 1947, right around 11:59 p.m. This is Don's photo, sent it to me. This is what it looks like. You can see these rolling plains, some low shrubbery, some bushes. There's no trees. It's devoid of any tall pine trees. It's just this barren land that has these sloping low hills. So that's the site picture we want to get here. Now, on the morning of July 3rd, it was rancher Mac Brazel and 7-year-old Timothy D. Proctor that came upon this debris field. And now we believe it's true that there was a gouge into the terrain, approximately 10 feet wide, 200 foot long. And according to Don Schmidt, Timothy D. Proctor, the way they rolled back then, if you were old enough to walk, you were old enough to ride a horse. And so that's why he was so young when he got out there. So these were essentially the 2 primary original witnesses, was Mac Brazel and then Timothy D. Proctor. This is perhaps what it looked like on the morning of July 3rd, 1947. Okay, so we'll move forward now. Here we have the crash impact site. This is the retrieval operation, July 8th, 1947. So it's interesting to keep in mind that through the night of the 2nd, and then the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and then somewhere around the afternoon, evening of the 7th, those bodies were laying out there exposed to the elements, and then critters could get to them as well. So the predators were eating on these things. So we'll talk about that too. But just going around, starting in the foreground here. Now, it's been said that the Roswell craft was a biomorphic designed flying wing configuration with 2 canted vertical stabilizers. Now, that's promoted for the last 25 years. Turns out that data was provided by Frank Kaufman, who was faking documents. Don Schmidt confirmed that later after this gentleman's death. He found forged documents on the back wall near the typewriter, and he was forging documents. So that's where that bad intel crept in. According to Don Schmidt, the Roswell craft was an egg-shaped craft the size of a Volkswagen with a small dome on top. That's what it was. And so that's what we've depicted here. You've got this small dome. There was a hull breach on the side of the craft. If you look up toward the upper right-hand side, you'll see a water tank and a windmill. That was confirmed by Don Schmidt. So wherever this thing crashed, it was within 200 feet of a water tank and a windmill. Off to the right of the windmill.
Was it silver?
What's that?
What color was it? Was it silver or white? The craft.
It was kind of
right?
more of a brushed aluminum type
Sorry
exterior finish.
I was very curious because that drawing there is pretty interesting.
Yep. There was a troop transport off to the right. We definitely know there was a Jeep there. We also know there was an 18-wheeler lowboy tractor trailer on site. That's been confirmed. There was also an ambulance truck as well. Now, by this time, July, the night of the 7th and the morning of the 8th, this whole story was just completely burning up all of Roswell. Word of mouth was traveling, and it was just burning up the airways. I mean, people knew about this. There were souvenir hunters that were going to the impact site. They were pushed away by military MPs. We've got that for a fact. Now, I want to move on to the next part here. Then, around 4 p.m., we got this plus or minus 2 minutes. We've got it nailed down to 4 p.m. This is July 8th, 1947. We know this because there were at least 2 paper boys and also multiple eyewitnesses confirmed a military convoy going right down Main Street, Roswell, heading over to Hangar P3 Building 84 at Roswell Army Airfield. There were at least 2 to 3 Jeeps up front, then this 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy truck with that same egg-shaped craft on top of it. They had put a tarp on top of the egg-shaped craft, and then they had strung ropes over that, and it was completely concealed. Behind the tractor trailer, there were at least another 2 Jeeps, and they were heading right to the hangar. So you're only within 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of Main Street to the airfield. So now I want to take you. Yep, go ahead.
Did anybody report a dog flying when it got close to the craft? It looks like that dog's like levitating off the ground. You know, it's like, I wonder if that craft is putting off like an anti-gravity field.
You never know, right? You never know. All right. So we'll move on now. I want to take you guys inside the hangar now. So here we have inside the hangar, and we'll look off to the right. Now, keep in mind, there was, when you go to Roswell and you look at this hangar, building P3 Building 84, what they did is they took this through the back entrance, not the entrance that we all see from the road. There's a back entrance, which you see here in this hangar door view. There, according to Don Schmidt, there was 1 MP posted on either side of the hangar entranceway, and they were told to look only forward. Do not look back into the hangar. So you can see you've got this entire military convoy rolling into the hangar. They quickly shut the door. And then off to the right, you've got the 18-wheeler tractor trailer. You've got the whole breech craft, the egg-shaped craft on the trailer there. Also, we've got the Jeep. Off to the left, you've got the military transport with some of the debris, also the ambulance. And then in the foreground, we've got 4 dead corpses. We have confirmed 100% there were at least two child-sized caskets there. And then in the background to the left, we've got a crate that they were building. So once they put the corpses into the caskets were put into this crate, and that crate was loaded into a B-29. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because there were 2 body flights. We know absolutely there were 2 body flights. The first body flight was flown by Pappy Henderson in a C-54. The second body flight was flown by a B-29 called Straight Flush. And this was concurrently going on at the same time. So, you know, it was a serious situation. Things were happening concurrently. It was, you know, a very critical situation. Now, what I want to take you to next then.
Wasn't there a theory, right, that the Harlequin babies or something, they use Harlequin bodies that are really like deformed human bodies, and to you know, there was some Annie Jacobson had that whole theory that it was like not even aliens.
That was she claimed Stalin was behind it, but that whole story fell apart because Michael wasn't the man that was behind that story senile. That told her that,
I'm not sure, but I would just go by the description of Pappy Henderson, who is the C-54 pilot, military World War II pilot, decorated officer. He said that it looked squiggly to him. That was his terminology, very thin, squiggly looking arms. In fact, he used the term Casper the Ghost to describe these beings.
Thing is, the Russians would have never been able to get that craft flown over here and dumped out into the middle of the desert in 47. That theory of hers completely falls apart, Jeremy, and from everything I researched.
So you can get us inside this hangar. It still exists today, right?
It still exists. Yes, it still exists.
I seen Michael, the dude with from Ancient Aliens, go in it in one episode. I remember that. So yeah, we got to go there and visit there for sure. I want to get a video of me and you touring that hangar. That will be our next UFO road trip.
Because
Sure,
the base is abandoned, right? Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to take you to the next part of this, is this location here. So this is atomic bomb pit number 1, July 9th, 1947. So in order to load these B-29s, they would taxi them right on top of these atomic bomb pits, and then with a hydraulic lift, they would bring this into the cargo bay of the B-29. And they had 2 perimeter screens around this atomic bomb pit, and they had MPs with machine guns posted inside and outside of each ring. And they were told definitely to shoot anyone who attempts to breach these 2 rings. So we've got straight flush taxied over the bomb pit. They're loading it, the crate, into the cargo bay of the B-29, and then this thing took off. And I want to take you to the next part here. That's where we have the Dayton, Ohio, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, July 9th, 1947, the beginning of the autopsies in the aeromedical lab of Wright Field.
That's a great illustration.
Yes. So this matches with what Walter Bosley said about what his father was briefed on with the aeromedical stuff at Wright-Patterson.
Yeah.
And, you know, really all we need is one of Leonard Stringfield's crash retrieval cases to be authentic. That's all we need. Now, when I went through the 75 3-ring binders, I pulled out 119 cases. We only need one. That's all we need. So, okay, so now what we can do at this point is I will go here.
And then
Yep, go ahead.
What do you think happened to the living alien? Because wasn't like 3 of them dead and 1 of them was alive, of course.
He lived a year later, almost a year later, May of 48, and then apparently we killed it with experimenting on it. So it almost lived an entire year later. That's the intel we have on that.
Wow.
So that's, I mean,
imagine that the UFO is really interesting. It's egg-shaped with a domed top. The egg shape is everywhere. The Charles Hall case, it's an egg shape, Tic Tac. We see over and over again egg shaped, cigar shaped.
Of course, Lonnie Zamora, egg shaped craft.
Lonnie Zamora. I was going to say that's the case I'm missing. The Lonnie Zamora case. It's exact. That's why I asked you if it was white or silver, because Lonnie's craft, as you know, everyone knows it
was white.
With some red on the side of it. It's red writing.
Now, I think you two gentlemen are familiar with most of these locations. This is kind of the source material, and this is the very small, fraction of where I got this, but just to document the sources: QFOS, MUFON, APRO, Invisible Residence by Ivan T. Sanderson. That covers the USO cases, and as you know, 51% of all UFO cases are, in point of fact, USO cases. So if anyone reads this book by Ivan T. Sanderson, Invisible Residence, I challenge anyone to walk away from that book thinking that there's nothing to this phenomenon. It's just impossible. It's just such a tight book. There's U.S. Navy cases in there of USOs. They've got Japanese fishing trawlers who throw out their nets. They go fishing for 3 hours. They start pulling up their nets, and there's a 45-foot diameter dish-shaped craft caught in the net. Those cases are in there. It just, it's something that has to be considered, and it's almost completely forgot about. The last one down here, Gray Barker UFO Collection, Clarksburg, West Virginia. You guys know about that one.
Yeah, how about Shag Harbor, too?
Shag Harbor. I thought it would be good to start here. We usually talk about the origin point of ufology being June 24th, 1947 with Kenneth Arnold. Well, that's not true, because if you go back in time, you've got nothing less than the 1897 mystery airship wave. This is years before December 17th, 1903 at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, where the Wright brothers flew. So this predates the Wright brothers by years. And
how accurate's that drawing, Michael, the airship there?
Fairly accurate now, and I'll tell you why. Because there are hundreds of newspaper clippings from the West Coast to the East Coast, and we know that it started in Sacramento. It moved to Oakland, also moved to San Francisco. And what the people were reporting, now keep in mind, this is a chaotic scene. It's at night. People are screaming. It's total chaos. They're running. Horses are bolting from one side of the street to the other. There's covered wagons that are flipping over. People are seeing this 150-foot long, you could call it an airship of some kind that had a wing on either side. It had a rudder in the back. It was being supported by this airbag. And then there was these beaming spotlights that were coming down. This is 1897. So there must have been a very high-powered lighting system to get these beaming spotlights. But what's interesting is if you look at the eyewitness reports, and there's literally hundreds of newspaper clippings, they said that they could see big black dogs on the deck of these ships.
Oh, yeah.
And in some cases, and here's a drawing of what it looked like, just total chaotic scene. There were anchors being lowered from these craft. That was seen multiple times. And in some cases, like a Zeppelin, some cases when these craft landed and then eyewitnesses got up close to the quote unquote pilots, these pilots were well-dressed, eccentric inventor types with suits on. They had top hats, and they even had quote unquote smoke-colored glasses. Does this sound like an alien technology here? No. There was laughter coming from
Breakaway.
Yeah, breakaway.
Michael, when was the earliest balloon rides over in Europe? They were
prior to
Benjamin
this.
Franklin was in. There was ones in France, if I remember.
Prior to this, by far. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Didn't they land and go into town and like buy a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, there were cases of landings. Yes, there were. But if you look at the technology and look at what these people were wearing, it just doesn't look alien. These are some of the points that we just talked about here. Let's see. In some cases, anchors attached to ropes were dropped. By May of 1897, virtually all the sightings ended. Here's an enlargement here. You can see this man with a top hat, well-dressed inventor type. Credit has to go to Walter Bosley for pinning this story down. I believe he has done it. I believe he has cracked this case, and he talks about these gentlemen being part of something called the Sonora Aero Club, and they're being financed by an eccentric group of financiers back east in New York City. And I think he's nailed it. Now, how did these things fly? How did it actually work? Well, according to Charles Delshaw, who was the artist, also a member of the Sonora Aero Club.
Big balloons with fans and propellers.
Yeah. He said that, number one, they had conquered gravity. They figured out how to conquer gravity. And then he said that these things were powered by something called NB gas that could negate gravity. But the secret to that died with them. And we don't know to this day how these things actually worked. So I asked the question, was this a covert program to deliver gold from the gold fields of northwestern California to New York City? That's my question. Was this a covert plan to move gold covertly? That's what I'm thinking.
You think there's helium in the egg portion? What do you think's going on there?
Well, whatever NB gas is.
Bat wings to it, right?
Some type of wings, yes. Some type of wings. And
probably, yeah. And
some of these things were clocked going 100 miles against the wind.
Wow.
Back in 1897.
Type of propulsion.
So,
and you know, where are they getting the wireless electricity back then? Unless Tesla's aboard.
Yeah, that's right.
Where are they getting because battery power was not back then. There wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, were these things steam powered? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's whatever NB gas is.
What'd you say? NB gas, Michael?
Yes, NB gas.
Okay.
That's the trick that they figured out how to conquer gravity.
I remember Walter talking about that.
Mm-hmm. I thought we'd move on here. April 24th, 1964, Socorro, New Mexico. This entire case falls on the integrity of the eyewitness, Lonnie Zamora. He was really never challenged. He always was truthworthy. So it's one of these classic cases within ufology. It actually starts with a family on vacation in Socorro, New Mexico, when you could call it about an 18-foot long egg-shaped craft goes buzzing right over their car, about 2 feet above the roof of their vehicle. They actually walked into the police department. They filed a report, and in the report, it's written, quote, "You people really fly your planes low around here." That was in the report. So fast forward just a few minutes after that, we have Lonnie Zamora chasing a speeder. He sees off to the corner of his eye probably that same white-colored egg-shaped craft. He gives up the chase of the speeder, follows this craft to somewhere in the vicinity of a dynamite shack, which is over a kind of a low rolling hill. It's a dirt, dusty road. It's a rough road. He gets in within about 300 feet of this craft, and he sees this light-colored egg-shaped craft. It has 4 lunar lander pogo landing gear legs with a very interesting landing pad configuration. There's an exhaust nozzle at the back, and then he sees these small-statured, you could call them quote-unquote test pilots, wearing this one-piece white tight-fitting flight suit. As soon as these two beings see that they're being watched by Lonnie Zamora, they get into this craft, and then, which I think is very interesting, and I think a key to this whole thing, Lonnie Zamora said that he heard a banging noise. About 20 seconds later, there was a second banging noise. Then there was this high frequency, you could call it a modulating, it's almost like a high pitched drilling noise, but it modulated. Then there was a very loud roaring flame that came out of the bottom of this exhaust nozzle. It was a blue color. It was not a campfire orange color. It was a blue color. This thing lifts off. The landing gear retracts into the body of the craft, and then it slowly flies away. This is all back in 1964. Here's some of the original newspaper clipping, the New Mexican, April 27th, 1964. And then here is the insignia that we've all been led to believe since 1964 of what this actually looked like. Turns out this is not the correct insignia. We got this from Ben Moss. The correct insignia is this one. It's an inverted V with 3 hash marks going right through the inverted V. So the question is, why did Lonnie Zamora promote the wrong insignia all these years? And I actually put that to Ben Moss. I asked him this question, and I just said, and this is his exact answer here. This is the cover of his book, Not of This World, the 1964 Socorro UFO with Humanoids, Witness Policeman Lonnie Zamora. Why did Lonnie Zamora sign off on a fake symbol? The symbol was, this is from Ben Moss, the symbol was changed by U.S. Air Force Major Holder for the simple reason that providing a fake symbol, if any other cases came up and a witness reported the fake umbrella symbol, then they would know that the witness was lying. By Lonnie signing the fake symbol, maybe drawn by Holder, Lonnie was signing a contract with the government to keep his mouth shut on the symbol. It was country, God, then family in those days. Directly from Ben Moss, November 22nd, 2020. So
they changed the symbol for leak detection.
They changed the symbol. That's correct. Now, here's something that I think is really interesting. If you look at this map of New Mexico and you look at this hash dash line that goes from the top all the way to the bottom, take a look on the upper left-hand portion where you see Socorro, New Mexico with a star, and then you look at the chart on the bottom right here, scale in miles. Just go ahead and go up, and you can see that the Socorro, New Mexico line.
Is that the mouse? That's okay. So that sound is your mouse going across the.
Yeah, it's Michael, because every time he's on, that noise comes on, and it sounds like cardboard being cut with a knife or something.
Well, people are like, it sounds like
your mouse or something.
I'm not moving the mouse. I'm not moving.
People
were
saying someone it sounds like something else, but yeah, it's like I don't know. Is your mouse?
No, Michael doesn't do lines of stuff.
No,
it's not.
Nobody's here doing that.
Nope.
We don't.
So the point I'm making here is that the Socorro, New Mexico Lonnie Zamora case happened within 5 miles of the western boundary of White Sands Missile Range. That can't be a coincidence. That just can't be a coincidence. It's like this thing was on a test flight. It might have had to make an emergency landing. They were doing quote unquote repairs. Once they found out that they were being seen by Lonnie Zamora, they got back in, they skedaddled out of there, and then went back into the range. That's what it looks like to me. Just the fact that they're within the vicinity of the test site here, White Sands Missile Range. I just don't think that that can be a coincidence. Then these are some of the things that we talked about. We talked about the two banging noises. We talked about the metallic slam noise, and then this blue colored flame coming out of the bottom of the craft. Also, which is interesting too, is if you look at the landing pads connected to the landing gear struts, you can kind of see that they look like an inverted barn with the top of the roof pointing down into the sand. And you've got these 90-degree right angle corners and sharp angled portions of this actual landing pad. Here's an actual photograph of where one of these things touched down, and you can see basically a female impression here. And they've got this in dotted lines, and you can see that it looks like the top of a barn. So what I did is I went into SolidWorks, I created a solid model, and this is a blow up of it right here. And you can see these 90-degree corners. Here's the model of the landing pad itself. And then I'm going to go ahead one more time. Here's the technical engineering drawing. And you can see the 90-degree corners. You can see the sharp corner at the bottom. Gentlemen, does this look like an alien landing pad to you?
Nope, looks like it was machined out of aluminum or titanium.
That's right. It looks like it was machined out of aluminum. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. You don't see 90-degree sharp corners in nature. Almost never do you see that. Almost never. It's always a curve like a pine cone. If you look at leaves, if you look at the cresting waves on the ocean, it's always a curve. You will almost never see this.
For landing in the desert too, because you're going down like a half a foot probably, depending on the weight of the craft.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So,
Yeah, I was going to say the legs on that kind of reminded me of the lunar landing module. They look
A
kind of
little
like the
bit,
same
yeah.
struts. And, you know, when you were talking earlier about the Zamora sighting, you know, he said that there was a blue flame coming out of the bottom
Correct.
of the UFO. Would that suggest like chemical propulsion, right? Some sort of thruster, not, I mean, which is dissimilar to the Tic Tac sightings and the things that we're seeing nowadays where they're saying, no, we don't see visible signs of exhaust. We don't see that sort of thing, you know, and that's kind of interesting. That to me kind of suggests that all this may have been man-made and kind of lends itself to your, you know, what you were saying earlier about it being next to the test range and whatnot.
well,
If you
imagine
go,
weight reduction through the magnetic field disruptor, right? You have weight
well, if,
reduction of 90%, and then they use a rocket on the bottom to lift it. I mean, it's possible, or some type of thruster. We do know that some of the technology out there is weight reduction, inertia reduction back then, and then they use a thruster to just propel this thing around like it was nothing.
so here's a question, Dan. Where else in ufology have we heard of a blue flame coming out of the
Cash
bottom of the craft?
landrum.
Cash
Cash
lantern.
landrum.
Same thing.
Yep.
Same thing. Sounds
Yeah,
like a hybrid
I think
propulsion
so.
system. Yep.
We were 20 years earlier here, though, right? Cash
Well,
landrum
at
was
least.
what, 82?
Well, December 29th, 1980.
That's another thing I wanted to tell you, Michael. Look up how many of these cases happen between Christmas and New Year's. Most of them happen between Christmas and New Year's. I'm not even kidding you. These big cases, a lot of them
Right.
are. It's shocking.
Like a really good time to make a test flight when everyone else is wrapping up presents. Yeah.
My birthday's within those dates. That's why I know that. I told Jeremy about that.
Yeah.
The case over in the big Rendlesham Forest over in England. That was the same time. The supposed the TR-3B over in the Belgian Wave. Same dates. I'm not even kidding you. You can look this up. It's guaranteed.
Yep. 89, 90. Yes.
Those holidays, they love to use those holidays, and it makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
It's just weird. Everyone's on vacation. Don't they send like most of the military people home during that?
Now the hardcore people are staying around, you know.
Yeah,
Right.
they
Maybe
don't
that's
have
why they
family.
do it, so there's less prying eyes around,
That's
right?
right. They
That's
get
right.
everybody out of there and do what they want
And
to
I
do.
heard they pick people for these programs that don't have family, so that they'll have no reason to be anywhere but on base during those
Yeah,
times.
they pick people that are dedicated, that are totally down, in my opinion. Japan Air, here we go. Wow.
Yep. JL Flight 1628, November 17th, 1986. Paris to Tokyo happened over Alaska. And one thing I try to point out is whenever you hear about this JAL 1628 case, you always hear only about the second part of this case. The actual case was in two parts. What the pilot and co-pilot both saw, and they can be described as Campbell's soup cans cut down to the halfway point. They're 150 feet in diameter. They have amber lights staggered from top to bottom, and then there's a thick piece of electrical tape that ran from the top to the bottom. That's the beginning portion of the sighting. Now, the pilot contacted ATC, was given authorization to make a complete 360-degree circle while these things were locked in position off the wing of this craft. They were following this thing. Now then, as these departed, later on, it's when pilot Kenji Terauchi looked off to his left and he saw this massive walnut-shaped mothership that he said, quote unquote, was twice the size of an aircraft carrier coming toward the craft from the port rear of the craft. So that's where I want to take you now. And these are the Miami Herald newspaper clippings, January 4th, 1987. FAA reviewing data from night. Japanese pilots report UFOs. So it's confirmed in the newspapers. Here's his original sketch of what it looked like looking outside the cockpit window. You can see the two coffee cans and then the mothership below that. And you can see the size of the 747 compared to this walnut-shaped mothership. Very large craft, very large craft.
It was so huge. It was, they know
Huge
how big it was.
So here's the pilot. He's describing it to members of the media, and then I want to take you to the craft itself. Here it is, the craft approaching the 747, and massive craft. This is not the only time something like this was seen over Alaska. There were other sightings of these huge quarter-mile, half-mile long dish-shaped, walnut-shaped craft. And he lost his job over this, but then later he was actually reinstated. So another case that John Callahan had talked about in the Disclosure Project. Pretty good case. Moving on. Now, this is an important case. This is June 22nd, 1976, Canary Islands. This is part of something called the briefing document. This is put together and funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. This document, which has about 20 cases in it, they're all top cases. This was handed personally to then President Clinton, and of course, Hillary Clinton saw it as well. So we absolutely know for a fact that Bill Clinton knows about this case. We know that for a fact that Hillary Clinton knows about this too. So here's the breakdown. You've got the Canary Islands. If you look off to the right, you've got this dot here, which indicates the point of the Spanish naval corvette, the Astrovida. This is where they originally saw the beginning portion of this sighting. That's where I want to take you now. So here's this light that they saw. Wasn't anything really interesting, but as this case progressed, it got a lot more interesting. What happened next is this, whatever this craft was, a light or something, it moved 1,900 miles per hour, 85 miles westbound to the Grand Canary Island. There was no sonic boom. Absolutely no sonic boom. And we have at least 6 eyewitnesses, including a taxi cab driver. There was a medical doctor that his patient was in the taxi cab. We've got 2 other witnesses that saw it from the vantage point of in their apartment complex. And what they ended up seeing was this about 25-foot diameter, clear, transparent bubble. You could say a soap bubble. And that's what this depiction is here. This is June 22nd, 1976. This clear, transparent soap bubble. There was this pedestal on the bottom, and then there was these small monuments wrapped around this pedestal. There was this clear, transparent tube that connected the bottom of the pedestal to the top portion of the soap bubble, and there was blue smoke coming up from the bottom all the way up to the top of this tube. And so that's where I want to take you now. This is what they saw. Now, on either side of this transparent tube, there was this two 12-foot high, quote unquote, alien beings. They had very tight red, tight-fitting flight suits on. They had elliptical shaped, elongated helmets, and they had their hands on these levers, and they were operating these lever devices. I'm not making this up. This isn't a report that Bill Clinton read. Very famous case, well known, but this is the Canary Island case, and it's well documented. Credit has to go to Antonio Huneeus, who did the original translation. We wouldn't even know about this case if it wasn't for Antonio. So credit goes to him for doing the translation. Okay, we're going to move on. December 1976, Dana Point, California. We've got the newspaper clippings on this case. The mother and her two children were driving down the road when a fat Frisbee, about 30 feet in diameter, it was very fat. It had multiple, you could say hundreds of these multi-processing computer lights that had flashing lights on them. And then there was a red blinking cone-shaped light on top, went right by their windshield. Here's actually the newspaper article clipping that shows it. But, you know, you're talking about something that has probably thousands of multicolored flashing lights, this red light on top. Here's the AutoCAD drawing I put together. But what's interesting is, and this is the drawing that we put together by Tom Bogan. Credit goes to Tom Bogan. This is the exact make and model of the car that they were driving. Don't know the color, but this is the exact make and model. Now, when this sighting was just about over and it passed by their windshield, the article states that this thing tipped up 90 degrees on end and rolled away like a wagon wheel, according to the eyewitness report. So here we have the craft tipped up, rolling away like a wagon wheel, about 35 to 40 feet tall. Very unusual craft, but this is not the only case of these fat Frisbees. We've got at least one other separate case of these fat Frisbees. So it seems to be some type of a pattern recognition. November 20th, 1956, Danielson, Connecticut. Woman was hanging up clothes. We've got it a little bit darker in the afternoon, almost twilight, but she saw what was described as a half hemispherical dome about 25 feet across. And she said on the bottom of this thing, it looked like a multiple vanity light type configuration, or like a light socket. And on the bottom portion of the light socket, there were 3 donuts that was actually connected to this socket. And I want to, just as another view here showing you these multicolored lights. And then here's an enlargement here, and you can see connecting these sockets, there's 3 donuts, and then separating these 3 donuts, there is a black colored band which separates these 3 donuts. Here's an enlargement here. Now, the primary eyewitness, this came from the Wendell Stevens collection. She said, and she did a very good sketch, which I'll show you here in the next slide. She said that on the bottom side of these donuts, she could see what looked like Inca or Aztec inscriptions or writing, or something that you would see on a Peruvian or Oriental rug border. That's the kind of Aztecing lettering that she could decipher. So she was directly below this craft. Here's her original sketch, and you can see her drawn out socket here with the 3 donuts and the black colored bands. Really well done drawing, just very well done. She also typed up a 4-page report that describes this case in great detail. This is my drawing based on her original sketch, but you can see off to the left, I've done an enlargement here where you can see the black bands. You can also see the different Aztecing, and then over to the right, I've done an enlargement of the Incan Peruvian rug borders. And so this is the November 20th, 1956, Danielson, Connecticut flying light bulb or vanity light UFO case. Next one, January 1st, 1970, Finland. 2 gentlemen were skiing. They were being chased, believe it or not, by this cloud-shaped device that was somewhat hidden within this cloud. They end up chasing this thing to a clearing on the ski slope. Pine trees were full of snow at the time. They come to a stop, and then Emerging from the bottom of this cloud is this 10-foot diameter dish-shaped craft with 3 inverted domes on the bottom, also a little bit larger dome on top. Then there was this bright flash, and a beam of light came out from the bottom of the craft, and then there was something that could be only described as a gnome, a garden gnome. He was wearing a green, tight-fitting flight suit. It sounds crazy, he had darker colored boots on. He was wearing full-length gloves. He had wrinkly skin with kind of a wrinkled nose. He had this cone-shaped hat, and then he had this camera device that he was holding, and it was like he was moving from one skier to the next taking photographs. I don't know if he was taking photographs, but that's what it looked like. Then the witnesses said that about 60 seconds after that, there was another bright flash. The being disappeared. The craft disappeared, and then within 30 seconds, one of these skiers immediately started getting sick. He threw up. He had to be helped about a good mile back to the lodge. So it's a CE2 case, and it's a CE3 case because it had physical effects. Very good case. Finland, 1970. Documented in different newspaper clippings, as well as foreign publications talked about this as well. Here's the original sketch that went with the collection. This is the one that we pulled out, guys. Gray Barker collection, Clarksburg, West Virginia. So well-known case in ufology. Want to move on to February 3rd, 1983, Mobile, Alabama. We had talked about this a little bit before. This came from the April Bulletin, and primary eyewitness was about 9 p.m. She was driving home to Mobile, Alabama, and she heard this booming noise. The car started shaking, and she pulled off to the side of the road. She got out of her vehicle, opened up the car door, looked under the vehicle. She thought the transmission may have fallen out partially. That seemed to be okay. She gets back into the vehicle, drives another half mile forward. Off to the right, she sees this lit up clearing area, goes a little bit further, and she is shocked and surprised to see this large, about 210 foot length craft, about 75 feet long. It looked like a sphere with a tapered wedding cake as it tapered near the back of the craft, or the aft end. She said that this whole thing was covered with these porthole windows. She could see from one side to the other. She also saw what she termed as Golden Gate rivets fastening this whole thing together. Now we'll start up on top here. You can see that there was a clear transparent window section that wrapped around the forward 1/3 of the craft. And she said that she could see what looked like 5'10" humanoid looking beings. It was an antiseptically sterile environment. They were all wearing these tight-fitting white one-piece tight-fitting flight suits. Below that, there was another wraparound window section. Below that, she could see what looked like 6 foot by 6 foot sandboxes, and then these 3 foot diameter tubes protruding out of these sandboxes. So there's at least 14 cases now of these prongs or protrusions coming out of these craft. Below that section, she saw a door that was closing from right to left. I don't know how she could see this, but she also said that there was a black asphalt road on the base part of that closing door. Off to the left of the interior of the craft, she said she could see on this left wall tubes, pipes, and cylinders. Now, this is the 12th time I've heard this tubes, pipes, and cylinders motif. It keeps getting reported. A lot of these people say that these pipes and cylinders look like something you'd find in a Midas muffler plant, just like a Midas muffler plant. On the bottom surface of this craft, there were 2 additional gondolas that had the same 5'10" humanoid looking beings. And then on the top of these gondolas, she could see what looked like multiple 24-inch by 24-inch highly polished mirror reflective devices that were in the shape of a cross. And one other thing I want to mention is that this thing dropped down low enough for her to look through one of these portholes all the way through the craft to the other side where there was another porthole. And when she looked inside the vehicle, because she got a good look inside this vehicle through one of these portholes, she said it looked like a cross beam and girder construction, like a truss bridge. But then she also said it looked like a shipping yard from the East Coast. It had multiple you could call them stringers and bulkheads as you move forward through the craft. She could see these multiple bulkheads and stringers that made up the interior structure of the vehicle. So this is the February 3rd, 1983 Mobile, Alabama case.
That thing's awesome. You know.
Yep.
That is totally awesome. Looks like something that would come out of the ocean, no?
Could be. That's very possible.
Some kind of submarine that would just come right out and fly into space, maybe.
That's very possible.
Doesn't an open front end on it suggest that they've got some kind of craft to go out and in? Isn't that like a bay of some kind? I mean, why else would you need the
That's
front
a very
end open?
good thought. Yeah, you would think so, right? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you got people looking out of it on different floors. It's like a observation area. I mean, it's just a really cool UFO, and it's huge too. I mean, that thing is.
It was big. It was big. Here's the actual witness report. That's the sketches that we based the illustration off of. So it's a well-referenced case. It has legs to it. It has documentation to back it up. Now
I bet it has a swimming pool and like a disco dance floor. It looks like a disco ball itself, but
it does kind of look like a tour ship or something, doesn't it? Like a big
yeah, like a
it does like a cruise ship.
Bunch of millionaires got together.
You know, you see the pipes that are sticking out, are they remind me of guns. You know,
they do look like cannons, but I doubt they're cannons.
No, I have a feeling that has something to do with possibly maybe
electrical discharge.
Yeah, you and that electrical discharge stuff, because of the 67 Tic Tac in Wycombe had different appendages hanging out from under it. Like Tic Tac, the actual Tic Tac has appendages hanging out from under it. And I think your theory of electrical discharge is probably right.
Imagine if like Avi Loeb builds a telescope and he catches one of these on camera. Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Anyway. I mean, this is just such a unique ship that, you look at that and it's just awesome. I'd love to see somebody do a rendering of this and have it flying through the air. Someone that's really good at this stuff. You know what I mean? The motion.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no doubt. And then have the door open up and then take you inside the craft.
Yeah, and you'd be standing inside there drawing it. That'd be cool. The ETs would be walking you and Jeremy Corbell around. Just kidding. Corbell's in the chat, by the way.
Is that really him? I don't think it's him.
I don't think it is,
pretty sure that's
the
a fake
picture's
one.
Tilted to the left a little bit. And Jeremy Corbell would never say, "I'm coming in, Jeremy." He would never say that to you. You know what I mean? No, it would be like, "F you, I'm out of here."
Yeah, I blocked the fake one.
We're not even talking about him. He's not important. I was trying not to mention him at all, but unfortunately.
Well, no, it's funny that the fake one's showing up in the chat. That's all. It's comical. We know it's not him.
All right, stay relevant.
Yep. Yeah.
So we've got the USS FDR case, November 1958, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. It's important to remember that the USS FDR had multiple UFO sightings that was recorded in the logbooks that mysteriously disappeared, and it was the first aircraft carrier to carry nuclear weapons on board. So that might be instrumental reason why it had all these sightings. So it's late 1958. This is the actual sketch by the primary eyewitness who I spoke to. It's been a good 10 years since I spoke to him. And this is his original sketch. And what he described is there was a massive commotion and chaos below decks. All of these naval personnel were rushing up the ladders to get to the flight deck. It was absolute chaos, and there was screaming and people yelling. And when they got to the deck, there were at least 25 eyewitnesses that saw this yellow light approach the aircraft carrier. And when it got about 150 feet above the flight deck, this was not just this yellow light. This was a 200-foot-long cigar-shaped craft. It had rectangular, square-type windows, and they could see humanoid-looking beings walking back and forth between these windows. Now, this is his original sketch. So we went ahead and did a enlargement on his sketch, and you can see the witnesses here. If you look at the craft, you can see the heat waves coming off the craft that they could feel on their faces. So it's a CE2 case. It's also a CE3 case because they saw beings associated with it. And then one of these beings pushed his head up against the window, was looking at the naval officers on the flight deck below, raised his hand up and waved to the men below on the flight deck. And that's his original sketch of this being waving at the gentleman below on the flight deck. So that's interesting because there's another case that shows that as well. Now, here's the rendering we came up with by Tom Bogan. You can see this being waving at the flight personnel below. And then I want to do an enlargement to show you what the craft looks like in the enlargement. So here we've got the being
That's
waving.
a tic-tac there, Michael.
There's your tic-tac. There's your tic-tac.
With windows this time.
That's right. That's right.
Can I ask, did this UFO actually, like, did it maneuver in, or did they just kind of appear right there?
No, they had seen it coming. They had seen it coming. It started out as a yellow colored light, and then when it got closer, parked itself about 150 feet above the flight deck. This was a long cigar-shaped craft with square porthole windows.
Yeah, it's interesting. It looks like kind of like a lab window where you'd look out over something where you're doing an experiment or something out, you know, like have an observation area. And that's kind of what it looked like to me, like a section of a lab that had been moved, or maybe it's a whole lab ship or something. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Possible.
If that was a Tic Tac, you'd choke on it. It's more like a cigar, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a large one.
Yep. All right, moving on. May 26, 1979, Calusa, California. Multiple newspaper clippings about this. It's 11:30 p.m. at night. The primary eyewitness is basically just watching TV, and all of a sudden, the TV conks out. Concurrently, the air conditioning conks out. So he goes back to the reverse part of the house there. He opens up the circuit breaker box. Everything seemed to be okay. The very next second, he could feel the hair on his head, the hair on his chest, and the hair on his arm start sticking up. The entire localized area was completely basically enclosed in a static electrical field. And he looked up and saw a 140-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. The top dome of the craft resembled a lemon squeezer with ridges on it, or an orange juice squeezer. On the bottom of the craft, there were 6 conduit pipes that came down and terminated in these frayed edges. And then on each side of the conduit pipes, there were 2 claw-like devices. And then what happened next is he looked off to the left, and he could see at least one more of these craft. It was about half the diameter. It was pulling power off the 500,000 volt power lines, causing them to become cherry red. And so this is a CE2 case because it has physical effects. About 30 seconds later, these 6 conduit pipes retracted into the bottom of the craft. The 2 prong-like devices, there's those prongs again, they retracted 90% into the bottom of the vehicle. And then exactly at the same time, there were these 2 gooseneck lights that popped out and shining lights down onto the house and barn below. At this point, the primary eyewitness is basically shocked and horrified. Here's the drawing that shows you what the craft looks like. You can see the lemon squeezer on top. You've got the different conduit pipes with the frayed edges, and then these gooseneck lights that popped out on either side of the craft itself.
What's the width of the craft? 30 feet, 40 feet?
I'll go back here. 140 feet in diameter.
Oh, wow.
Large craft. Now, so he goes into the bedroom. He wakes up his wife, his 2 kids. They go to the back of the room. They pull back the blinds. They open up the window, and they see the large craft flanked on either side by 2 smaller craft, about 70 feet in diameter. They're pulling power off the 500,000 volt power lines, causing them to become cherry red. And then the large craft in the center goes from a dead standstill to about 24 nautical miles away to the rolling hills in the background that you can see in this illustration. And then in less than a second later, it repeats it and goes back to the original point, all in less than 2 seconds. So this thing had basically gone 50 miles in less than 2 seconds and made no sonic boom. So someone's building something that can do this, that can outperform an F-4 Phantom, anything in our best arsenal at the time, anything the Air Force had. This thing could just fly around at no power, no problem whatsoever. Would be no match for anything that we could put up. Could definitely outperform anything we could have. Now, He piles his family into the pickup truck. They go screaming down the road at around 90 miles an hour. That large craft starts approaching them, flies over the cab of the pickup truck, goes off to the left, goes back over the cab, over to the right. They eventually make it to the neighbor's house about a mile down the road, slam on the brakes, get out, pound on the door of the neighbor's house. 2 neighbors get out. So you've got the 4 primary eyewitnesses plus the 2 neighbors. So 6 witnesses see this large craft fly away, and they got a good view of it. And this is all per the witness statement, and as about it's about a 9-page typed out report that describes this case in great detail.
I would be curious to see if the power company reported a load drop, or
there was, there absolutely was.
To like
There
suck
absolutely
so
was.
much power out of those lines, turn them red hot.
Yep.
What year was this one, Michael?
This is 1979.
By the way, the 78, 79 Ford truck is amazing. It's just like the original Bigfoot truck. Whoever drew that did an incredible job on the truck. It's blown away by that. And again, the artwork's stellar.
It's all by Tom Bogan. Yep.
Yeah,
All by
amazing.
Tom Bogan. Okay, moving on. 1961, Stigler, Oklahoma. 2 eyewitnesses are driving down the road. It's just after dusk, and they notice a 40-foot diameter dish-shaped craft approaching their vehicle. It shines this bright light down onto the craft, to the vehicle below, and then they notice that the entire vehicle is lifted about 16 inches off the pavement. The report says that next thing that happened is the speedometer on the vehicle reached 120 miles an hour, and they were completely dead still. They weren't moving at all. About 30 seconds later, whatever this craft was lowers the vehicle back onto the road, and then this thing flies away. There was also some electrical disturbance that you can see off to the right, but it's a multi-witness case, and it was reported. Here's some of the original article and artwork that we based the illustration from, but this is not the only time this has happened. We've got others of these vehicle levitation cases, so it's more than one case. Back in 1961, someone's building this that had the technology to do that. We've got the close encounter classifications. I think everyone knows what these are. First kind, second kind, third kind. We already know about that. We'll bypass that. This is the case I pulled out of the QFOS archives. Don't think it's ever really been talked about before. It was just buried in there, sitting there. As soon as I saw this case, I said, oh, we got to do a nice drawing of this. December 26, 1972, Venezuela. There were 3 primary eyewitnesses. They were on the top floor of their 14th floor apartment complex looking off to the right. They were expecting to see this airliner approach their location, and it wasn't an airliner. They thought it was an engine nacelle caught on fire. As this thing got closer, it was a semi-lenticular, or you could basically say elongated elliptical shaped craft, 50 feet in length. On the back 1/3 and basically the 1/3 of the right and left hand side, there were multiple double cast iron exhaust ports. It also, on the bottom of the craft, had 2 twin opposed hemispherical domes that had a continuous spark gap mechanism going between it. So there was this blue colored light, or you could call it a flaming welder's torch light, going between these spark gap mechanisms. Here's the drawing I put together. If you look in the bottom midsection here, you can see these cast iron exhaust ports. But then he said, coming out of these exhaust ports was a violet or purple colored, quote unquote, electrical discharge flame that looked like lasagna noodles coming out of this. Those were his words. That's what these things look like. So here's the twin hemispherical electrodes facing one another with this continuous spark gap mechanism going there. And I'll advance one more, and you can see these lasagna noodle flames coming out of this craft. About 2 minutes later, a second craft identical to this one passed by, and the husband told the young daughter in this case to run over next door to get the spy glasses or binoculars from the neighbor. She ran back, gave it to her father, and he looked through those binoculars, and he got a very good close-up view of this craft that passed by. So very good eyewitness sighting. Credible case. I think you're familiar with this one, Dan. May 16th, 1967, Falcon Lake, Canada. This is the Stephen McCulloch case, Falcon Lake case. We know this very well. He was a rock hound. And
Hey,
yeah.
Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
We got some guy saying that we didn't provide evidence for that power drop, and he wants to show like where the evidence of the power drop is.
Okay.
He keeps hammering on that, but so
I've got the 6
I know you
page-
have a document for it, and
Yeah.
you wouldn't make a claim unless it was true. You're not like Corbell.
Oh, yeah.
These other guys, and there's a big So let's.
You're
we'll
talking
get that
about the
document.
Are you
I want to
talking
get the
about
documented.
the Calusa, California case?
Yeah, with the power
Yeah.
drop. I want to
it-
get that document to show that there was
Oh,
a power
there
drop.
is no question about it that it did turn the power lines cherry red. That is absolutely mentioned in the report, and I can give you a scan of that if you need it. Yep. So here we've got two 40-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that were hovering over Stephen McCulloch. Now, he had a thick plaid shirt on. He had leather gloves on. He was wearing thick jeans, and he had a welder's goggles on as well because he was chipping away at rocks looking for minerals. One of the 40-foot diameter dish-shaped craft departed at kind of a medium rate of speed. The other one landed about 200 feet from his location. He walked up to it and was kind of walking around the right-hand side when he noticed that there was a doorway hatch that opened up, and it was emitting this purple violet light. And about 10 degrees counterclockwise from that hatch was another hatch that was much smaller,
Love this.
but it had these perfectly drilled holes in it with about a 2-inch pitch to them, like someone took a CNC machining device and punched in holes. It was perfectly drilled.
Yep.
Here he is looking in. So the 2x3 hatch is over to the right, him looking in. The 6-inch by 8-inch rectangular vent exhaust port is to the left of his location. Now, he heard laughter and an intelligible language that he couldn't decipher coming from the interior of the craft. He didn't see anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing that happened is this door slammed shut, and the craft started hovering about 12 inches off the ground, started rotating basically in the clockwise, or actually it was the counterclockwise direction. And he actually got burned. And what's interesting is his clothes caught on fire. He started throwing up as he was trying to get home. But later on, it was very apparent that the whole pitch pattern on this exhaust vent lined up and matched perfectly with the burn mark on his chest. And I know you're familiar with this, Dan.
The TV show Unsolved Mysteries does
Yep.
an incredible episode on this. And Falcon Lake, we know it as the Falcon Lake, but the guy's name is Stephen McCulloch.
Yep.
And it's one of my favorite cases. I love it because it's left evidence, radiation burns on him. They would go away, come back. How about it,
That's
Michael?
right.
They'd go away,
That's
come
exactly
back,
correct.
Come back. Yep.
You got it. Here's an enlargement of the burn mark matching up with the vent. I don't know. I'd say about 1/8-inch diameter holes. And then as it spread out, that's where the burn came from. Here's some of the original renderings, some of the original sketches. And then here you can see the burn mark. There was also some small debris found at the site as well. And then through Antonio Huneas, I was able to secure a photograph of the landing site, and you can see the circle where this thing came down. That's this one. This is from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and you can see the circle where this thing landed.
We're talking about a perfect flying saucer.
Yep.
Here, everything. I mean, this is textbook perfect flying saucer.
That's correct. That's correct. Here he is right here. Foul smell persists. UFO sighter suffers chest burn. Edmonton Journal, May 24th, 1967. Here he's holding up his sketch of the craft. He wrote a book about this, which almost nobody knows about.
Yeah, and
Very
he made that drawing,
extraordinary.
right? He did that drawing, Michael.
He did that drawing. Yeah, that's his drawing. Yep.
Wow, look at what he says there. I've lost 12 pounds in the last 2 days, and I've been laughed at. but I thought it was my duty to report what I had seen. 12 pounds in 2 days. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is a lot. Now, did he? I didn't know he wrote a book. What's the name of the book?
I don't recall the name of the book, but David Marler has the copy. It's the only one I've ever seen. It's the only one I've ever seen. It's kind of a loose leaf briefing paper more than a book, but he describes it in great detail. He had, ongoing medical problems after this case, and it's one of these top 10 cases, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just go get radiation burns at Kmart. I mean,
True.
This case here baffled doctors and everything because he had the evidence right there on his body, and that was it.
Well, then they say they had found some radioactive material on the ground or something like that too.
There was some residual there, yes, and then debris as well.
Pieces. They found like a wedge shape, a W shape piece of a unique metal or something, wasn't it, Michael?
Right. Yep. That's right. That's correct.
I got to find more information on that metal. I want to look up. I want to get more info on that.
Well, I can tell you where it was sent. It was sent here. Radioactive metal fragment found at the scene. The fragment was 4.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. The metal fragments pictured at right were radioactive when found. The University of Manitoba is conducting research into this case with the cooperation of Mr. Michalak. So there you go. That's where it was sent.
Walter Bosley's in the chat, man. I'm going to send you a link on Facebook if you want to join the panel, Walter. Great to have you here.
Yeah, I did not know that you're saying the book was like a pamphlet style. I have to think about Michalak. He's been gone since the 90s. So.
He died about 4 years ago.
Oh, I thought he passed away in the 90s.
No, he died recently.
Well, he had to be pretty darn old then.
Yep.
When he passed away, right? Because it was like in his 70s when this happened.
He was 50.
Oh, was he 50?
Yep.
Well, when I seen him on Unsolved Mysteries in the 80s or 90s or whatever, he was probably 60s, 70s. He was from Poland, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Now he lived up in Canada. Well, you gotta look up the Falcon Lake UFO incident, and it'll come up. If you put his name in, you're not going to get as much.
Yeah, that's true. You're right about that. October 9th, 1972. This came from the QFOS archives, Long Island, New York. This is basically near Smithtown. Do you know where this is, Jeremy? I don't know.
No, I think there's been a lot of activity out on Long Island, New York, and there's a couple secret bases out there, and there was some talk about a lot of secret stuff that goes on out there.
A lot of that stuff just comes out of the ocean.
This was what I'm terming the flying iron. It was black in color, kind of a flat black. There was at least 5 elongated rectangular lights on the bottom of it, on the right and left. There was a pulsing white light on the front of it. Now, the couple basically, the husband stopped the car. The wife got out. The husband sat in the driver's side and rolled down his window. He looked at it, but the wife got out. She walked across oncoming traffic and was pointing and looking up at this thing as this thing flew by. And she said that it had a red light on the left, a green light on the right, and then on the back of this thing, on the top portion, there were 2 poles sticking up with a wire connecting the top of the poles. And this is back in 1972. This is the original article that describes this case in great detail. So UFO Investigator, February 1973. Gentlemen, I don't think we're looking at an alien spacecraft here. What do you think?
You know what, Michael? It reminds me of UFO over Illinois without the goalpost, I'll say. On the
back. That's right.
If the goalpost wasn't there, we have that, I'm going to say, guitar pick shape.
Yeah, that's right.
That over and over again, the triangular shapes, the guitar pick shape, the arrowhead, whatever.
The arrowhead,
what
yes.
Do you suppose, Michael, the large goalpost was in the back? You're probably going to say some type of electrical discharge. Once again, I imagine, right?
Or something that looks like the lifters.
To lightning. What's that?
Yeah, it looks like
those lifters where it has an ion wind coming from that upper antenna.
Yeah.
It has
Oh, okay. But I imagine if these craft have the electrical power and all that stuff going on like we think they do, right? A lot of this stuff with the discharges may be due to lightning. Maybe these things are really susceptible to lightning because of the charge when they're going through the air. There's something that has to do with electrical discharge, and I have to sit down and think about it electrically.
Well, you can bet that there's high voltage electricity being incorporated because it's having secondary effects on vehicles,
Yeah,
static on the radio.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I wonder if it attracts lightning and it attracts electricity right out of the air, and they have to discharge it somehow because maybe they've learned we aren't going to fly anywhere if we get hit by lightning. There's something going on there. And obviously, they've probably corrected it over the years because you don't see these appendages. Although the Tic Tacs got the appendages out of the bottom.
Of course.
Theorize that that's the discharge again. And I think you're right.
Yep, we see this. There's at least 16 cases of these prongs or protrusions. Here is the original sketch by the eyewitness. And if you look close, yep, you can see the lights on the bottom. You can see the red light, the green light, the two poles, the wire sticking up. They independently interviewed both the husband and wife, and they both described virtually the identical craft.
Oh, I love it.
A huge, I've got the transcript of about an hour video, audio tape transcript.
This sounds a lot like it sounds like blimp technology with experiments with electrogravitics and blimp technology.
You
Sort of does, yeah.
You'll be right there. How fast was it going? It was going
Slow, very slow.
Okay. How long was it?
I think about 40 feet in length.
It really looks like the stealth blimp that they had showed in Popular Mechanics magazine at one time, if you remember the shape. It was it Popular Mechanics, or was it one of them? They had showed the black stealth blimps at one point in time back in the 90s. And it's really that shape, you know. And looking at that, it reminds me of something that would be a possible blimp. I mean, it's really cool, whatever it is. But 40 feet, okay. I was thinking it'd be a little bigger than that. I'm used to these triangles being massive, you know.
Oh, this is part of the Otto Binder collection, and this is published between 1965 and 1969. There were cases from all around the world sent to author and researcher Otto Binder. He commissioned sketches to be made up, and then every week he'd have this column called Our Space Age, and it was published all around the United States. Now, there's 300 of these cases within the Otto Binder collection that, you know, all three of us were working on when we went out there. But just a couple of them here. October 12th, 1796, on Columbus Day over 170 years ago, Canadian observers reported an astonishing fleet of airships, UFOs, with portholes and visible occupants sailing over the Bay of Fundy from the Pacific Stars and Stripes back in 1796.
Talk about a Tic Tac sighting. Remember, it was raining UFOs is what Kevin Day said. It was raining UFOs. The only problem is they were IFOs.
Yeah.
Somebody knew what they were, in my opinion, guys. Those people were not read into the program. They wanted to see how they'd act. That is a fascinating.
Here's the full color rendering we put together.
And there was an EP
the drawings
like that, Michael.
You put together some awesome drawings because you have all this case document, and a lot of it's like witness descriptions and testimony and stuff. And the way you put these illustrations and these drawings together really brings these cases to life in a different way.
Yeah, Michael, email me that picture then after we're done, please. I want that.
Sure. Yes. I mean, the point here is to make these cases come alive. You know, bring them up to modern day standards here. But we've tried to keep everything intact. And here's another one. July 1868, villagers in Campeche, Chile, were frightened by a giant armor-plated machine covered with steel scales whose twin searchlight eyes stabbed down brilliantly back in 1868 with these same brilliant light spotlights that the 1897 mystery airship wave happened. But this predates the 1897 mystery airship wave. And the steel scales. I mean, if this thing was steel, it would have weighed tons.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, you don't hear of a scaled UFO very often, do you?
No, you don't. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
What's that kind of remind you of? B-2 wing, right?
A little bit, sure. A little bit. So here's a
Or,
rendering we put together.
you know what else it looks like, Michael? Hudson Valley. If you take away the rockets on the aft,
Little bit like the
Right?
Hudson Valley. Yep,
boy, that shape, that boomerang, right?
that's right. Or almost like a Horton 229.
1868. This was seen.
Yep,
Oh, wow. I
1868.
thought it said 1968.
No,
Check that out.
1860. It predates the 1897 mystery airship wave.
It looks like it's got thrusters on it, like an Atlas rocket or something.
Yep.
Yeah, imagine seeing that in 1868. It's not a bird.
Nope. This one came from QFOS Archives, September 4th, 1967. Go over this very briefly. Two brothers were setting up stereo equipment on the top of their apartment complex. They see this 25-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It eventually parks itself, and I kid you not, 10 feet above their heads. They look up at this thing. It's completely filling the sky because it's right above them. And what I thought was interesting, now this is his words, not my words. This thing wasn't flying. He said it was gliding on an oil pathway in the sky. That's the terminology he used. So whatever these things are, they don't fly. They float on an oil pathway in the sky. They're like liquid mercury. They just cruise on by, and they're not using any aerodynamic Bernoulli theories of lift for any of this. This is a completely different way of flight. This is his original sketch. So you can see 25 feet in diameter, 5 to 6 foot diameter dome on the top, a little bit of these rectangular portholes on the outer circumference of the craft, and then kind of a raised section on the lower portion as well. This is his original sketch. AutoCAD drawing I did off of his original sketch. I like his better, actually. Then we'll move on to the Fothergill sighting, June 26, 1959. This is Papua New Guinea. Important to note that there were 25 locals who saw this with Fothergill at the time. So it wasn't just Fothergill. This is a multi-witness case. And what they ended up seeing is Fothergill was in the mission at the time, and a woman who was an assistant just came in there screaming, "You've got to see what's outside." So he walks out, and he ends up seeing a 35-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, which is the lower portion of the craft. The upper portion was 20 feet in diameter. It had tapering cone-shaped, quote-unquote, landing gear legs. And then on the upper deck of the craft, there were 4 men. I'll have to get that. There were 4 men on the upper deck of the craft, and 2 of them were further toward the center. They were somewhat obscured, but he could see at least the other 2 were further near the outer rim of the craft. They were more visible. Now, what's interesting is Fothergill actually raised his head above his hand above his head. He waved to them, and one of these men waved back. It's also called the wave back case, and there was you could call it a light blue colored white light that went off at a 45-degree angle. This happened over a period of 3 days. This is just the June 22nd, 2659 sighting. Later on in 73, Fothergill has dinner with J. Allen Hynek and his son Paul Hynek. And when Paul described their dinner meeting, he said that Fothergill just laid out the case. He wasn't seeking fame or fortune, but he just completely laid it out calmly, and it was completely believable. When I heard that from Paul Hynek, I thought, wow, we got a real case here. This is an enlargement of what the craft looked like with the 45-degree beaming spotlight. And what appears to be these landing gear legs. Now, I don't know if those are landing. They could be more of these prongs and protrusions. It's possible.
So this is the second one that you have where people were riding on top of, or in, like the bubble one, people were riding inside of a type of UFO, but on a platform. But again, you don't see that very often. Normally they're inside the craft, right? They're not on top of it, because there's going to have to be some sort of stabilization or inertial dampening, something up there to keep them from flying off of the thing, right?
Exactly. Yep. It was stable enough to walk on the top deck, so it had to have been rock solid, definitely.
So I want to welcome Walter Bosley to the panel. Welcome, Walter. And also Bernard. it joined us as well. No sign of Corbell yet, even though there was a guy in the chat rooms named Jeremy Corbell saying he wanted to join. So I sent the real Jeremy Corbell the link, but he hasn't joined yet. So it'll be a riot if we got him on, man. Perfect addition to the panel. Michael, continue.
Yep. Okay. So this is Chicago O'Hare, April, May 2001. This predates the 2006 famous O'Hare case. So this is not that same case, but I interviewed the primary eyewitness, who is along with 5 other eyewitnesses. Now, keep in mind, it had rained the night before, so it was early in the morning. It was still wet. The tarmac was still wet. He describes them working at something called the Ozark Hangar at O'Hare Airport. And then he said, now looking at a side view here, you can see it looks more cigar-shaped, but it was actually a circular dish-shaped craft. And this thing flew by the Ozark Hangar. He said that it had about 12 elongated slots on the side of it, and it was interior lit from the interior, so there was white light coming out of the craft. He said there was a bubble transparent canopy up front, and then a circular, what looked like a porthole on top. So he got a top view of this thing as well. But then he said at the aft end of it on top, there were these octopus tentacles that were moving like they were alive. And at the end of these octopus tentacles, there was one about 16-inch diameter, highly polished ball at the end of these. So we've got these prongs and protrusions again. Here is his original sketch of what the craft looked like as it was flying by. And then this is the latest drawing per his new original sketch. This is a cleaned up drawing. And you can see these.
This is the O'Hare Airport case.
This is O'Hare Airport, but it
this
predates.
Is the one that shot through the cloud?
No, this is a different
case.
It's
another one.
Yep, that's a different one. But what he said, though, is that as this thing passed by, about 30 seconds later, there was this low rumbling on the far end of the airport. It was a 747 on takeoff roll, and it had just passed and took off exactly where this craft just passed 30 seconds prior to. So if this actually happened a little bit later, there could have been a mid-air collision and hundreds of people could have been killed.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting. Doesn't it show that it's a stealth vehicle then? Because if it was near an airport and it would show up on radar, they definitely would have caught it and grounded the planes around it or diverted
you would think
air
yep.
traffic. Yeah.
Yep, you would think so. That's
they have
right.
in all the other ones, yeah, like Aguadilla, and there was another one in Portland where something like that happened too. And they're just on the side of caution when they can. They will ground people for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Walter Bosley, it's a pleasure to be on the same panel with you. I was muted before. I've never met you before. I'm Dan. I'm a huge fan of yours. Jeremy and Michael will tell you. He's muted too.
Oh yeah, so hey, I muted everybody in the chat because some people were complaining about background noise, and
there now Walter's on. Good.
Oh,
Walter,
okay. Well,
And
thanks. I'm a big fan of Michael's, and I would much rather hear Michael and see his presentation on old cases have been around a while, than the ridiculous hyperbole on stuff that today is,
it's
really
boring, right?
nothing.
Michael's got so much too.
Walter, it's a pleasure to be with you, Walter. It's a privilege and a pleasure.
Oh, hey, we met, I think, in 2014 when you presented there in San Mateo, and I wish those guys would do events just like that, like that one and the one in 2015, because it's this kind of stuff here that you're doing that those shows were trying to present, but I guess it wasn't wacky enough for the mainstream UFO media. So
this type of show keeps the belief going, at least. The newer stuff makes you think, come on.
And Walter, I have to say that I really enjoyed your book that covers the 1897 mystery airship wave, and I think, sir, that you have nailed it. I think you have nailed it. Yep. You got it.
Thanks. Appreciate that coming from you, especially because all I tried to do was pull those historical threads and, you know, your other option, our other option that constantly comes up is it was all the reverse engineering of an alien thing that came from, like, no, there's a historical thread going back that has been leading to this development. Not that I don't believe in ETs, like I've said a million times, but, you know, that's why this kind of thing you're doing is so important, because, you know, it's showing this human development of this stuff that has been suppressed, right?
Yeah, what you guys are showing is there was an elite society back in the 1800s that was flying around in ships. That it's mind-blowing to think about it, but the same thing's happening today. There's technology we don't know of.
Right.
It's incredible. It's just.
And Walter, there was a test flight demonstration for President Lincoln, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
That was in that was the Solomon Andrews craft. That was during the war, and it was in D.C. There were members of Lincoln's War Department that witnessed it, as well as newspaper reporters. It wasn't exactly like what Del Shall claimed about the Sonora Aero Club of the 1850s, and it wasn't exactly like the 1890s, but it did have, it wasn't just a balloon, it was a controlled flight, you know, airship, so to speak. And, you know, that happened. Yeah, there is one drawing of it. It's like three, it looks like three Zeppelin, you know, bodies put together and with gondola underneath.
Yes.
Wow. We'll have to research
Doctor.
that.
We got another super chat here from Dr. Fox, $20. Money, he says, thank you, Chanel. Tequila to the rescue. Okay. Cool, man. Thank you for the money. Thank you so much for the donation. And I don't like tequila, but I will definitely buy some beer with that money.
Talk
for
about
sure.
wanting to puke, man. Oh gosh.
Right.
Like 800 to 1700. You can actually go back further into like French and German science.
Can't hear you at all. Man.
I can't hear anything you're saying at all.
Your mic is terrible.
Sorry.
So shall we move on?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll have another break, trust me.
I can just hear him. He must be on a phone, and I can hear the echo of the noise cycling around, and I can't hear what he's saying. Sorry, man. You gotta join back up when you get like in studio and get on a mic. Sorry, dude. Nothing personal.
So do you want to move on to Temple, Oklahoma then?
Yes.
Okay, so, and Jeremy, we covered this one before, so we'll kind of go over it briefly here. Now, this is March 23rd, 1966, Temple, Oklahoma. This is a Project Blue Book case. You can verify this at the National Archives, so it is an official Project Blue Book case. This involves a electrical engineer who worked at Shepherd Air Force Base. His name is Eddie Laxon, and he's driving down the road. It's about 5:05 in the morning, so the sun hadn't completely come up yet. A little bit dark, and he's driving down the road, and all of a sudden he notices that there's something blocking the road, and it looks like this large bowling pin sitting on its side. It's also been described as a perch or fish looking type vehicle, and he described it as about 75 feet in length, about 8 feet tall, and if we look at the forward portion of it here, it looked like it had a bubble transparent canopy off a B-26 that was about 4 feet in diameter. So it was a transparent bubble canopy front. Just aft of that, there were two beaming spotlights that were pointed forward. On the bottom of it, there were two beaming spotlights that were pointed vertically downward. The whole thing was about 3 feet off the ground on these pogo landing gear legs. Now, aft of the bubble transparent canopy up front, on the starboard side of the vehicle, which is the right side that we see here, there was a air stair cutout entry hatch. Right next to that entry hatch, there was what looked like, according to Eddie Laxton, a man, not an alien being, not an extraterrestrial, a man wearing two-piece military green fatigues. He was holding a flashlight and shining out on the bottom of the craft like he was inspecting something. He had a baseball cap on with the bill turned up. Above him, on the upper spine of the craft, there was a spire or stinger that wrapped around and tapered back and was basically skewed aftward toward the back end of the craft, terminating in about a 12-inch diameter ball. Now, that is almost identical to the electrical trolley cars in San Francisco, where they had this spire coming up that made contact with the three lines. That's what this thing looked like. Now, just aft of this air stair door, there was another circular porthole that was about 3 feet in diameter that was divided into 4 equal pie segments. Just aft of that porthole were the black letters written in black, according to the report, TL4768, written on the starboard side of the craft. To this day, I've never heard of anyone who can decipher what that designation means.
We've got Walter here.
TL4768.
Walter, what would TL possibly stand for in the Air Force?
Off the top of my head, you got me, and you know, think about it. You're going back to the '60s, so
yeah,
you know, you'd have to be attuned to what they were using.
To me, this could be Navy though, also, and I say that because of the big porthole windows and how thick they are. It looks like something that could go right into the ocean and then come right back out and go right into the air now, doesn't it? Those windows tell me maybe this is a naval type of vessel. But once again, I think as we crack gravity, and this is what happens. This guy's in the middle of the road for some reason, and Eddie Laxon, I'll never forget that name.
Oh, I know.
And Mustang on it. Again, the drawing's incredible. The drawing makes it. I have this drawing as my screensaver.
Oh wow! Okay.
That and something else. But,
now this could be a joint U.S. Navy Atomic Energy Commission program. That could be the TL part of it. It's a nuclear designation. Now I don't know that for a fact, but I think we should look at the AEC being involved in this as well. Now, at the very back of this thing, he said that there were small control surfaces that were way too small for them to be effective. So I don't even think they were control surfaces. Now,
how about Russian designations for TL? Anything?
I suppose.
Wow.
You would hope that it would be one of ours, right?
Yeah, but if it were a recognizable TL, that like the L, the equivalent L in Russian in Cyrillic looks different than our L. So
yeah, that's right. This is his original sketch. This is the original sketch by Eddie Laxton, and you can see the dimensions here on the front 8 feet, on the top 75 feet. So this drawing is actually way out of scale. It should be a lot longer off to the left. So that's the correction I made here on the secondary drawing. So here's the secondary drawing, which is more representative, I think, here. Now, he said that on the shoulder of this man that was carrying the flashlight, it had these ranking bars on his shoulder. So when you say that that it could have been some Navy thing, absolutely. I think that's very possible. Very possible, Dan. I think you could be right about that.
Yeah, he was definitely an officer of some type.
Yes. Yep.
Wait, those were on his shoulder, on this part of his sleeve?
Yep, just where I have it shown here. If you follow the arrow, that's where they were. Some type of
that's some. I mean, Army, Air Force, and Marine rank. That's enlisted personnel, which would be, one of your flight crew guys, possibly. Because that's the amount of stripes for Master Sergeant, I think, right? So if it's up here, and it was the 2-piece green, which in the 60s the Air Force was wearing the if I'm not mistaken, they had the green. Yeah, the Air Force was still wearing those gray silver not dress uniforms, but your service uniform. But the what we call BDU today, the khakis or whatever. I'm doing a brain dump. I believe they were the solid Vietnam era green. So does it say what color the stripes were, perhaps?
Just from what's in the report itself, that I got from David Marler. He gave me the 12-page report on it.
Yeah, because if they're blue, if they were like dark blue, then that's the subdued Air Force color on the green, BDU.
Okay.
So
it looks like there was also symbols on the bottom of the sleeves too, and I think isn't that more Navy, Air Force that does that?
Yeah, see, when you get to the bottom of the sleeve, you're right. That's a Navy thing, right?
Yeah.
If those were up near the shoulder, that's more Army, Air Force, because the Air Force uses Army rank, so does the Corps, I believe. But yeah, the Navy, that would be like a chief petty officer. So again,
okay.
you know, your tech crew, because in the Air Force, pilots are officers, same as in the Navy.
You
So,
might have like a crew of like 8 or 10 on something like that if it's 80 feet long, maybe less. It reminds me of a submarine. It reminds me of a submarine that could fly right out of the ocean. Again, most of your UFO cases are USO cases, and people don't know. I think it's 50%, right, Michael? Something like that.
It is 51%, right? 51%, and what's interesting, what's interesting about this case is just prior to this thing lifting off and shooting away, he said that there was a high-pitched drilling noise. Then this thing lifted off the ground, retracted the gear, and then took off like a spark in a grinding wheel and made no sonic boom. They estimated going about
when you say
700 miles an hour.
Grinding wheel.
Yep.
That's how you would think that something like that would take off. No inertia, no weight. It wouldn't have any effect on the person inside of it. Once you eliminate that, the spark against the grinding wheel makes sense. The tic tac, they explain that as a ping pong hitting the wall.
That's right.
Just bouncing around, and I don't understand. You know, Walter, I think there are too. I've heard you say the same thing. The movement of the thing going back and forth erratically like that. I wonder if the damn thing can't sit still. You know, I've pondered that. Why it just keeps going like this.
And it might be that that's how we're perceiving its action. Maybe if you're on board the thing, you're not actually experiencing that. The thing that bothers me is when all the "it couldn't be ours" naysayers, you know, who are a bunch of civilians who are not in this military technical secret world, will say, well, this is not like anything we know. Well, duh, it's not like anything you know or we on the outside know, because the stuff's classified, so we're not going to know it. And so I can't stand when I hear these guys say that it's, you know, there's nothing that they have read about. Well, of course not. You know, if you're not read in deep in what's being tested, you're not going to know about.
And the only accurate action is to not let them know. And if, like you said, if they're not read in, they're not allowed to know about the program, period. So you use
and it doesn't matter who you are. This is why, again, all due respect to Commander Fravor, you know, when he makes a typical, you know, pilot jock comment like, you know, if I wasn't briefed in on it, it wasn't ours. You guys have heard me go on about that. It's like, please, David, stop. You know better than that.
Don't you think the cap point explains that it was definitely us? It knew where it was going.
Yeah.
That right there tells me they are always going to leave a clue there to say, hey, it was us.
Everything about that says it was our stuff.
That's right.
What's that, Walter?
I was just saying, everything about the Tic Tac to me that we know, everything about it says it's our stuff that was being tested and such.
I absolutely agree.
But this thing here, really, this Temple torpedo thing, this is really fascinating. I'm not familiar with this case. That's wild. 1966. And think about it. Look at the torpedo rocket shape. It looks like something that, you know, was in the line of our development, right? Mm-hmm. In that era. So, and you got Shepherd Air Force Base. That's a lot of intel stuff goes on there. But you've got, you know, in Texas, you got Randolph, Kelly, all these other places where they're testing things, and you know, a lot of secret stuff goes on in and around Texas.
Can you shut the thing off down there? Oh, okay, there it goes.
Yeah,
something like that. You could put it on the back of a tractor trailer, right? Put a cover over it, drive it down the road. No one think anything. The Tic Tac's the same way. It looks like hydrogen tanks. It looks like fuel tanks. Yeah. You could put 2 or 3 of them side by side on a tractor trailer, drive them down the road, and I wondered to myself, is that why that's shaped that way? So no one pays any attention to it if it's just sitting alongside the road. There's a lot of stuff going on that we'll know someday, maybe.
So again, those of you just tuning in, don't forget to smash that like button and share this video. It helps with the algorithms and helps to promote and spread this content. Again, we're just doing a historical review of some older cases with Michael Schratt, and he's put together some excellent drawings to sort of breathe new life into these older cases so that these historical, you know, happenings of ufology can be remembered and and rehashed. That's all we're doing here. This isn't like for any means like the best evidence or to compete with the scientific and academic level work that we do as well, trying to understand the propulsion of these things, what they are, and just know about the science and the technology that exists out there and is being studied, and that kind of stuff.
Nice
so
about the panel, right?
Yeah, this is about the panel. Here we have Michael Schratt. Michael, where can people find you? You have a website or anything you want to plug?
Just on Facebook, and then my book on Amazon. That's it.
Oh yeah, his book is incredible. There's these drawings are in there. Walter, the drawings in there of that. I call it the what do I call that thing, Michael, with the tail on it? It looks like a scorpion to me, like the scorpion.
You've probably seen Michael Schratt's drawings around. If you see, he's got a lot of
what is
stuff.
that? The dark. I have it right here. The
Dark Files.
Of course,
you got
Dan.
You got to send Mark. You got to send him a copy of that.
Dan, I met through Ed Fouché, and he knows John Lear. He's known John Lear for years. He knew all those guys on the old forum, Ron Schmidt, and all those guys. And Dan's been in the community for a while and done a lot of research into cases, including the Bob Lazar case. He's an expert on the Bob Lazar case, probably one of the best. And I would put him in as my fighter if I had a debate against Corbell any day. Corbell won't show up anywhere. Dan shows up.
I hate to be that arrogant, but they know they'd lose.
I brought Manny on from Area 503 and to join the chat as well.
Manny.
So hey everybody, it's nice to meet y'all.
Good to have you here again, Manny, and of course the famous Walter Bosley of former U.S. Air Force OSI. And he was in Mirage Men, and he's written several books. We're doing some really great investigations.
Brilliant guy, Walter. I just can't believe I'm sitting here. I'm not trying to get great, man. But I've told Michael and Jeremy many times I'd love to talk to Walter Bosley about the TR-3B sometime, whether it's real or not. What he thinks. We'll talk about that later.
Once in a while, I go in the right direction.
I knew Ed Fouché for a long time, and you and him remind me of each other. Ed was brilliant, very brilliant guy, just brilliant. The way you guys flow your words and stuff together is just, there's something reminiscent with the way you guys talk and stuff. These are both Air Force 20 years, so
we're talking about sober Ed Fouché.
Yeah, I mean, Ed towards the end of his life was in an incredible amount of pain. He was on painkillers and he could barely move, and I was the last guy to talk to him the day he died. So we spent 5 hours on what you would call we used Ubu, but it's the same as what's that called, Jeremy? Skype. And I knew something was wrong, and he passed away that night. But, he never ever told me that story was bullshit. Never.
So man, this is great. We gotta have more people on. Oh, is Dr. Greer in the chat now too? Or is this the troll coming back as a different name, man?
Yeah, it's funny how them trolls can just change their names in 2 seconds. It's amazing.
Right. Throw up a picture, all of a sudden.
They come right back.
Stephen Greer is here. Well, kick Stephen Greer out. Jeremy Corbell comes back, and it's just,
I'm surprised Bob Lazar hasn't been here yet. I mean, you know.
Oh, you just say his name 2 more times.
No, I don't. I try not to talk about him anymore. I spent of anybody you guys know, I spent way too much time on that guy. But who knows the story better than me? I don't know of anybody. I'm not trying to brag, but I got that story down. I changed Michael's mind about it.
People want to have a Bob Lazar panel. Definitely, Dan's an essential guy to invite if you're going to have a Bob Lazar panel.
I do not need Google at all. I can sit here and it's all here.
Yep.
And you talk to Gene Huff. He's cool. I've become friends with him. He's the only one I didn't know. And I don't believe this story, but they all talk to me except Bob. It's ridiculous. So
yes. So again, I'm the alien scientist, and you can. I'm my Misfits shirt, and my mohawk.
Oh, the hair is awesome. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so you can check me out on
You at the bar
AlienScientist.com.
earlier or what?
The websites earlier. No, I kind of wanted to do my hair up. I usually wear like a hat or something, but I wanted to like
Is Stephen
change it
Greer
up.
really in the chat, or what's going on here?
Dude, invite him on, man. I don't know how I get a hold of him.
Hey, he would interview on your show. You need to interview him.
I've tried getting a hold of them, man, and I don't know. Maybe I should reach out again.
What do you think's going on with him? I mean, these claims they offer, he's really.
I want to debate him on his intel sources.
Alex Jones the other day.
This is funny because let's go to Stephen Greer. All right, where's the Stephen Greer? All right, hold up, I gotta find this.
If he would be in the chat, I wouldn't be shocked. Your channel's pretty popular.
I gotta find the part on here.
Midnight on a Saturday, that's pretty darn good.
So if you go to this interview that Stephen Greer recently did with hold up, where is it now?
He's on Alex Jones last week. Again, he throws out that thing where he claims they gave him $2 billion. I'd just like to talk to the guy, you know.
Yeah, I want to know. So he was on Demi Lovato.
Dropper.
And he said he's repeating the same stuff that he's had, high level sources killed because of the information they provided him with. And then he said he's also talked to the scientists and he knows about the propulsion systems and how they work. But then he says, I won't bore you with the science of how they work here. And it's and then keeps going on. But I was just like very curious about that part right there. It's like, well, what does Stephen think he knows about the science of these things? And I'd love to get a conversation with Mr. Greer where we have an audience that won't be bored by the science and will actually be quite interested.
On his channel, Stephen Greer, he's with a guy named John Warner IV. John Warner IV is a Mellon. His cousin's Chris Mellon. And you should see the different approach that he takes. And he's a billionaire, or he's up there. His mother, I guess, is a Mellon, and they're like first cousins. And he talks about what he thinks about Mellon. But you should hear all the UFO cases he's involved in. He believes Charles Hall and the Tall Whites is real and all kinds of stuff. And it's really interesting. He just did an interview with Greer about a month or two ago. And Greer right away throws that thing out there. Well, they offered me $2 billion. I'm sorry. I just don't believe that $2 billion offer thing 20 years ago. That's ridiculous. To get somebody out of the UFO field. Michael, how much did they offer you? $300 and a Happy Meal at McDonald's or something like that?
That's right.
I mean, seriously, your research is better than his. I mean, why didn't they offer you freaking $2 billion?
How come they haven't ever approached me and if they have, they've discreetly and
I mean, that's an incredible amount of money, and the Army offered him that. I mean, come on, $2 billion 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
He says that, it just throws everything he said out the window. I don't know if that's just me or what, but if you're gonna lie about that, I $2 million, not $2 billion. I mean, $2 billion, and he was saying that on Alex Jones like 4 times. He's exacerbated it over and over again, and it's getting worse. The first time I heard that 5 years ago, I thought, he just made a mistake. He meant $2 million. No, $2 billion to drop out of this. How would you even think about that? $2 billion to leave ufology. He's making that much of a dent? And I don't think so.
Interesting. But Ed Fouché, I'd love to talk to Walter a little bit later about that.
Man.
So, yeah, especially that whole did you catch the jab that Dolan made on Kurt Jamungal, where he throws
Ed's grandfather, for goodness sakes?
He mentions Ed's grandfather. He talks about nefarious actors and the influence of intelligence agents within the community, and then he drops Joseph Fouché.
Walter, here's something that's interesting. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, all these guys that are in what I call the UFO mafia, they're all against Ed Fouché. Now George has told me in private he is, but Jeremy Corbell the other day is like, all that TR3B is bullshit. Now he believes everything in the world. He just believes everything. But the TR3B, I can't know. There's not, even though there are triangular objects filmed all over the world and stuff. I'm not saying it's real, but they try to say that Ed's lying and this and that, but they do it indirectly. But here's the thing. These guys could be a bunch of disinformation agents, and then maybe they're just their messages, hey, don't believe that guy. And maybe they're actually saying he's telling the truth by the attack. I mean, it's bizarre to me and Jeremy, isn't it, Jeremy? How it's
don't they have a problem with him and anybody who can prove that Lazar wasn't at Area 51? I mean, isn't that part of Ed Fouché's? Wasn't that part of his knowledge?
Ed's the one
he
that
had actually been there, right?
Yeah, Ed was there. Ed started. I actually have Ed's paperwork from when he was there. It's just a small yearly review where his review was delayed by 2 months because it says he was at Detachment 3 for TDY 30 days or something like that, which delayed his review twice. And he had that paper. I'm like, wow, that's fascinating because Detachment 3 is what Area 51 is. That's just Detachment 3 of Edwards. I read that, was shocked. I'm like, wow, remember that, Jeremy? And
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can bring it up.
Right,
I have all
I
his
keep
files.
forgetting the part that Ed just went after Bob Lazar. And recently, I don't know if you know this, Fred Dunham, the one guy that sued Area 51, he's come out and did a video or an interview with Victor Calero and says he used to go down to Papoose Lake all the time. There's nothing there except there was a shack down there and there's a radar jamming unit in there. And that was it. There was no buildings in the side of a mountain, any of that. He was there from he was there from the late 70s till 93. And they're like, well, how do we know this Fred Dunham's real? Well, he just happens to be in the lawsuit, for Christ's sakes, against the place because of the stealth coatings. And he was very sick from it. And he said all the guards that he worked with are dead except 3. And there's a picture of him with like 10 of them. There's 12 of them EG&G guards. And some of them are natural causes, but a number of them, Robert Frost and them, they died from them chemicals. And Clinton blocked the lawsuits. Remember that? Bill Clinton wrote a declaration and blocked the lawsuits from going through. And Jonathan Turley, the attorney, was not even allowed to say Area 51 in the courtroom. It was crazy.
Because of the back then, yeah. Well,
to this day, Jonathan Turley's secretaries can't go in his office because there's paperwork in there that's classified and they're not allowed in that office. It's really bizarre. And you can see this. It's on TV. It's from like 10 years ago. He's like the most bizarre case I ever handled. And he's a professor now of law.
My question about Knapp and Corbell, I'm curious just exactly how much money are they actually making by continuing to just doggedly stand by this Lazar thing? Because you got to look at human motivations. This is what you learn when you've been a criminal investigator, and particularly when you've gone, when you do espionage cases, you learn what motivates human beings, and money is, money's the number one reason why, by the way, why Americans commit espionage and treason. But we're known around the world for doing it for money. We'll betray our country for money. So money's a strong drive. So I'm wondering, has anyone followed the money? Because if it's not money, what other reason are these guys just stubbornly pushing Lazar and standing by all this? It can't just be their ego and their supposed reputation.
That's something we ask all the time. It's $1 million question.
And they can't be making millions off this Lazar thing, can they?
It's interesting because they had that. They had that interview with the guy who did the flyovers of Papoose Lake and took all those super high def photos of it for first, and then that disappeared.
Hill that's supposed to be S4 there. And I measured from the bottom of the hill to the dry lake bed, 1,700 feet, Walter. So, and Lazar claimed that dry lake bed went right up to that hill where the hangars were, and there was a concrete thing there and all this other BS. But he had changed his drawing twice because his buddy obtained a satellite image from the Soviets back in '92. She completely changed the drawing and everything. That was the first drawing. That was from John Farrat. He had him draw that. That's actually on the side of a mountain. Now, after they get the satellite images, Jeremy, come to the other one that changes to this.
Yeah.
And then see the little airplane and stuff. He claimed there was like an airplane over here that was landing there. What's his name? Fred Dunham said that road is so terrible down to there. He said you can barely drive a Jeep down through there.
But the thing is that he heard about S4 because S4 is a tiny little shack at Tonopah where they did all the ECCM's research, and he had heard about that through John Lear.
That's the Foreign Technology Division, though, too. That's their RCS.
People don't understand it.
Yeah.
We dug into all the sources, so all the real hardcore intel that's in the story, we dug into all the facts of the story.
His friend Jim Tagliani worked at S4. He was an electrician. He had been in and out of there before. He was an electrician on the range.
UFOs in the government Bible came from this group called the Aviary, which was led by Richard Doty and had a TV episode called UFO Cover Up Live that aired the year before Bob Lazar's case came out.
And they had, did you show Walter, they had Richard Doty come on with George Knapp last year. And Richard Doty says he drove down to Papoose Lake and he said he was down there to interview a guy. And he said, the door opened right on the side of the mountain like that, just like Bob Lazar said. He said, but it's not called S4, it's called S2. And he's sitting there lying right to everybody's faces. You can see George Knapp doesn't believe him. Do you remember that interview, Jeremy? It's on Mystery Wire. It's unbelievable. You know, the level of lies that have come out. It doesn't matter what they say. The facts are there's nothing.
It gets exposed, and then like Joe Rogan just ignores this stuff, and he continues to say no one's ever debunked Bob Lazar, and he's the most credible whistleblower to date, and all this stuff.
Could be disinfo, in my opinion.
I think it is because there's so many other real physicists that worked on classified programs like this, and this is not how it happened. The story is just a distraction from the reality of what goes on out there.
4 days either to go on that base. It takes. Fred Dunham said it took 7 months for his SBI to come back.
But the thing is, this story intrigued me back in the day and got me to look into, I looked into all the Element 115 stuff. We found that it came from a May 1989 Scientific American article that talked all about the island of stability, named Element 115, and talked about using it as a fuel if we could create a stable isotope and all that stuff. It's all in this article. Bob
Bob admits that in one of the interviews.
It's clear where Bob took all this stuff from. So we've traced down all his sources. None of it was classified. None of it was pre-predicted. It was so easy to predict higher elements. All you had to do is know is simple chemistry and arithmetic to predict element 115. It was in chemistry books that predate the Lazar story, shown as predicted as a predicted element in old chemistry books. You can go look it up if you want. So there's just no scientific data or evidence to that story. But it got me looking into all the DARPA stuff and meeting with real scientists who work for DARPA and who are really and it introduced me to the whole propulsion community that I learned about through guys like Tony Robertson, who's a big panel member. His name's Glenn Tony Robertson. Sorry, and he
say that one guy's going to come up.
Yeah. So the guys like this who contribute to the APEC conference, we have real.
Jeremy, what's the deal with him again? I can't remember. Didn't he work for NASA or somebody?
He headed the STAFE. I think he headed this conference called the STAFE conference, I believe, and it was a propulsion conference, the section F of the STAFE conference. So it was a propulsion conference that accepted papers on new propulsion technology ideas from physicists who wanted to apply for DARPA grants and DARPA funding. So it's where all the DARPA projects get introduced and come from. It's sort of. It introduced me to the real world of the classified programs, and I learned more about what goes on in these programs and how they function from the inside, from talking to people who regular people who aren't they're not out there in the spotlight. They don't go. You'll never hear of these people except through this.
Who's back out? Who's back out? And I'd like to get all you guys' opinion on him. David Adair's back. Did you see him?
Oh, we got to get David Adair on, man. I've been getting a lot of requests.
Back and he claims he's going into a space program over in India or something like that, and they're giving him big time bucks and all this stuff. I'd like to know if there's anything real about him. Apparently he's loaded. But what's the deal with him? I mean, you see him every 8-10 years.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to get him on. Michael, I didn't mean to interrupt. We were kind of in the middle of Michael's presentation there. We took a 20-minute detour. But that was important. We had to people a break at the 2-hour mark. How much more do we have left? I could do this all night.
We can continue on. No problem. I just wanted to show the index card to let everyone know that this is a real case. You can verify this on your own. This is the actual Project Blue Book index card. Over on the left-hand column here, you can see the date, the time, and in the brief summary, it talks about how the object was 75 feet long, nearly 8 feet from top to bottom, about 12 feet wide, and it just has a very brief synopsis of the case. And then what I did is I dug down and did a deep dive into the newspaper clippings, and here he is. This is Eddie Laxton here. That's his photo. That's the depiction of what the craft looked like. The Daily Oklahoma, March 1st, 1971. It says, object sighting now rude. So what they're saying is here is after the sighting, when he came forward, he regretted ever even talking about it because he was ridiculed for it. And it actually adds more credibility to his case.
Michael, was there any evidence on the ground, like any, did it leave a footprint?
No, not that I know of. There's no evidence. However,
Nothing.
there was a truck driver that saw it as well. So he wasn't the only witness. Yep.
Good.
Yep.
I love that drawing and that newspaper drawing. It's
a good drawing. It's a real good drawing.
It makes the case, it warms the entire case up when you have a visual like that. I mean, it really warms the case up.
And I want to document my sources so people can verify this on their own. That's why I provide them newspaper clippings too. So, yep.
I love this case because there's a human being that comes out of the UFO. It's not a little gray. It's not a big gray. Right. It's not an energy orb. It's a dude in fatigues with a flashlight, like inspecting and looking around. And that makes perfect sense. You're like, hey, man, maybe something happened to cause him to land and he had to check something out. Maybe there was a transmitter that was out. Maybe, he hit something. Who knows?
Thank you. Fatigues was the word I couldn't think of earlier.
Yeah. It's just, it's, we always hear about the, like we had the garden gnome earlier and I chuckled and I'm like, yeah, but how else are you going to describe these things? They're aliens, like how do you describe a 3-foot looking human other than to call it a garden gnome if it's, wearing green and a red hat, but yeah. And when you got a man coming out with a flashlight, that's amazing. That's a good one. I think that should definitely be looked at a little harder.
So here we've got July 9th, 1995. This came from the David Marler collection, Grovos Mills, Missouri. And what they ended up seeing, there was about 4 eyewitnesses that saw this in a forest. There was a triangular shaped craft in the background of this case, but they saw this modified thimble type vehicle that had rotating multicolored flashing lights around the outer circumference of the craft. And then there was these white colored beams of light shafting down with circular orbs going up and down inside the shafts of light. Very interesting case. 2-page report that goes with the case, multiple eyewitness, and this is from the David Marler collection. Really, really good case. I like this one. But the configurations of these things are just so crazy. They're so unusual. I have not seen this configuration in any other of the case files that I've been able to run across. So this is kind of an unprecedented case that I can determine.
Probably swamp gas.
Yeah, that's what they'll call it. And then we have to talk about the Michelin Man cases. I mean, no discussion of UFOs would be complete without the Michelin Man cases. And now this is something that's repeated in multiple different countries. It's been seen all around the world. So this is July 31st, 1968, Reunion Island, Indian Ocean. And this gentleman was picking grass for his rabbits, and he kind of walked around a corner, and he saw this 16-foot long egg-shaped craft that had a translucent forward and aft section that was blue in color. There was a transparent section in the middle. There was what looked like a silver glass pedestal supporting structure on the bottom, and then a mirror image one on top. And then inside this craft were these 2 quote-unquote Michelin men. And when the one on the left saw that he was being witnessed by the primary eyewitness, he turned to the one on the right, and there was this big flash. The craft disappeared. And then 2 weeks later, when investigators got to the site where this thing was exactly sitting, there was some residual radiation in the field where this thing was there. So this is like the first Michelin Man case. Here's some of the original artwork that went with it. Very well documented case. This one was able to get from the Gray Barker collection. This is March 14th, 1976, Lyra, Spain. The parents had just finished the son's naval graduation at a naval graduation party. They were riding home, and it was the wife that looked off to the left. She saw it first. What she saw was this white light that was in this corkscrewing motion. It had like moved up from the pavement, and then it basically transformed from this cork of white light into what could be described as Sunday night at the Oscars. It looked like just like Sunday night at the Oscars, but it was this Michelin Man type guy. He was wearing this black suit, rubber suit with ridges on it, looked just like the other one, very similar to the other one. They passed by, they were driving a Peugeot car, and it started causing the electrical system for the lighting to flicker and eventually conked out. So it's a CE2 case. And then as they drove by, she turned around and looked through the window in the back, and this thing kind of like looked at her, and she got this real creepy sense. This is the original sketch that goes with the case. You can see the location of where they saw the being. And here you can see that this thing was about, I'd say it wasn't walking. It was hovering about 16 inches off the pavement. And this is what the driver said. It was not of this world, but of another, Don Vincent Correll. This was his description of what he felt this thing was from another world. Not possible, I suppose, but it's part of the record. Now, also within the Gray Barker collection was this case, December 12th, 1977. This is in France. There was a young school child who was washing dishes in the kitchen. The kitchen window was open, and she was looking out as she was washing dishes, and she sees this 22-foot long egg-shaped craft that was completely red. It had no doors, windows, nothing at all. And then she said this quote-unquote Michelin Man who was wearing a black diving suit, he had this very strange round-shaped helmet on his head and then a square glass cutout window. He emerged from the craft. There was no door, no window. He just emerged from the craft. And this bottom drawing here shows you all the points of landing. And then about 2 minutes later, whoever or whatever this thing was went back into the craft, and then the craft flew away. And it was this pulsating red lighted craft, but definitely egg-shaped craft. So that's 3 Michelin Man cases. I'm sure there's more, but these are just the 3 that I was able to pull up. Talk about USOs really quick. Unidentified submerged objects. We already talked about how they represent at least 51% of all UFO cases. Here's the government report, 1969. They spent $600,000 on this Condon report. And according to Jacques Vallée, they didn't even report on one USO case. In this whole $600,000 report, they didn't even consider one USO case. So they have missed out on 50% of the entire phenomenon. They didn't even consider it. They completely whitewashed all the USO cases, which I find just amazing. Some cases you have to go outside of the United States to get the actual intel on this. This is Canadian UFO report. And then we've got, within the Ivan T. Sanderson collection, we've got the naval training exercise. This involved the USS Wasp off the coast of Puerto Rico in 1963. There were 5 additional naval ships with 2 submarines. And for a period of about 3 days, they tracked a USO going 150 knots at a depth of 27,000 feet back in 1963. So we should ask the question, who had the technology in 1963 to outrun all our submarines, all of our submersible vehicles at 27,000 feet depth back in 1963? And definitely confirmed by the U.S. Navy. Did happen. Absolutely did happen. Other cases from June 14th, 1992, Catalina Island. Witnesses on Catalina Island saw hundreds of these dish-shaped craft just below the surface, and then they pretty much burst out of the water, and it was seen by multiple eyewitnesses. We're talking about dozens and dozens of these dish-shaped craft just flying off the coast of Catalina Island. Seems to be a magnet for these things. February 7th, 1989, Catalina Island. There were at least 2 eyewitnesses that saw something that looked similar to this float on top of the water, was there for about 60 seconds, released 6 flying saucers off the back of it, then submerged under the waves. Very well-known case within Catalina Island. Now, here's another one. This is also from Ivan T. Sanderson. August 4th, 1967, Venezuela. There was a primary eyewitness who saw this 18-foot diameter sphere that was kind of a turquoise green blue. It emerged from the water. There was water falling off the side of it. It made about 3 rotations and then re-submerged into the water. Well-known Ivan T. Sanderson case. USS FDR. So here's another one. This is after the one we talked about before. 1963, west of Italy. The initial contact, and I've written this out so that there can't be any confusion. The initial contact was 600 miles from the ship at 80,000 feet. Then it approached the ship at a range of about 10 miles and 5,000 feet. At that point, they scrambled F-4 Phantoms, or fighters after this craft. They could not catch this thing. Eventually went right by the USS FDR and then made these incredibly sharp right-angle turns at over 4,000 miles an hour. This is back in 1963. So again, who is building these craft in 1963 that can outpace our naval jet fighters?
That's similar to the Jim Mars buckyball right there. Very similar. Did you ever see the buckyball, Jim Mars?
Nope, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, look it up. He talks about it in videos. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine.
That's the shape of a buckyball.
It came beneath the sea. Dr. Ruben J. Velela, a Brazilian scientist aboard an icebreaker in Admiralty Bay, Antarctic, was shocked out of his senses when he saw a strange craft shoot up from the sea through more than 37 feet of ice. Now, that's the question, right? 1955, Antarctica, Operation Deep Freeze. Whatever this thing was, this elongated bullet-shaped craft, it punched through 37 feet of solid ice and then flew away back in 1955, confirmed by the U.S. Navy. So now we have the capability to do that with our nuclear attack submarines, but we can only punch through 37 inches of solid ice, not through 37 feet. This report, which is also talked about in the Ivan T. Sanderson collection, said that when this thing punched through the ice, these huge chunks of ice flew out, right around where this thing punched out. And then there was this hole cut out there and then boiling and bubbling water where this thing departed and went right off into space.
Must be a frequency around it, right?
Could be. So here's the commissioned artwork that I put
sounds
together.
like those directed energy weapon, the directed energy supercavitators,
That's possible.
It would boil it instantly.
All that, right?
This was done by Bill McDonald, did this illustration for me, and it just shows you what it might have looked like as it was punching out. Now, there were 2 people on the starboard side of the ship that got a good view of this thing. But this is within the Ivan T. Sanderson collection, and it's part of history. Here we have the 37 inches of solid ice, but not 37 feet of solid ice. So someone had the technology.
That's incredible. 37. And you think the boat spooked it or something that it came flying out of there? Or was just showing off and saying, "Hey, I'm more powerful than you"?
Don't know.
Like the animal kingdom. Huh.
We don't know.
Any windows on the thing, or
not that it was reported. No,
like
not in the report.
Looked like a missile, didn't it? I mean,
it looked like a very smooth bullet or torpedo. Yep.
Pretty incredible.
Then we had reports in the early Reagan administration where these Soviet Typhoon-class boomers, where they had 200-foot-long, basically bullet-shaped craft punching right out of the water right next to the Typhoon-class boomers. This went on for multiple times during the early Reagan administration. Like those are also recorded as well.
Looks like a bullet, doesn't it? And it looks like some type of screw charger there in the back that would I don't know. That's wild, man.
Yep. So that went on too. So here's the cover of the book, and I recommend this book to anyone who even has a passing interest in this. You just can't walk away thinking that there's nothing to this after reading this book. It's solid. It's just ironclad.
It's a classic.
It's definitely a very good book. Very good book.
Yeah.
A couple other Otto Binder reports. So April 19th, 1959, near Japan, aboard a fishing boat, the amazed crew spotted two saucers diving into the ocean at terrific speed, yet no wreckage was ever found, as if the UFOs had deliberately submerged for an underwater trip. So this is the original sketch, and here's the color illustration that Tom Bogan put together. So we just want to make it come alive here. We'll move on to the next one. June 3rd, 1961, Silvana, Italy. Giacomo Barra and his companions felt waves rocking their motorboat, then saw a huge UFO rise up out of the sea and sail off through the sky as if equally at home in the ocean or in the air. That's the key, right? They can go from one medium to the next, and it's no problem for them. They have the capability of just moving from one medium to the next. So here's the full color rendering that we put together.
That bubble is around the thing. It's impervious to ice, obviously, too. So
you
just found that out. Never heard of anything with ice before, ever.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next one, 1882.
Hey, people, it's not slurping noise. It's Michael's mouse sliding across the his table. His mic's very sensitive and picks up the mouse sliding across his table. It sounds like slurping or something else. Yeah.
It sounds like a paper cutter, man. We used to cut paper with one of them things.
Yeah.
Cool. We all remember that, but some of the people in the crowd might not.
Here, guys, this is some real
They don't
slurping.
use paper anymore. Oh, gosh.
There you go.
Michael, so we've got a lot of cases pre-1900.
Oh, sure.
I'm liking this. I'm thinking, maybe there's a book that needs to be written or done, right, Walter? Look at Walter. Walter could collaborate on something, man.
Well, here's the thing. I would love to see Michael do his thing on this pre-1900 stuff. I've done my thing, but, your technical approach could really add to the discussion and the argument for the human development, the human technology development angle. So, yeah, good idea.
That's what I think you've done such a great job pinning down, that you're showing the legacy, the lineage of it. And there is a man-made component to this, and we should never underestimate that.
It's incredible that it goes back that far. I just remember the French launching balloons straight up and then straight back down. And they were doing that back in the,
18th century, 17th.
Or that long ago. Yeah, 1700s is when they were doing that, because I remember John Adams and Ben Franklin, I think, were part of watching this happen. They were so fascinated. Never seen a balloon go up and down before with people in it, when they were over in France. I don't know what years that would have been.
So let's do this one here real quick. 1882, near Ascension Isle, a British steamer came across a gigantic UFO floating in the ocean, at least 800 feet long, or nearly as big as the Queen Elizabeth, which slowly sank beneath the waves and vanished from sight back in 1882. And here's our rendering of what this craft looked like.
Transparent, huh?
Somewhat transparent, translucent. Mm-hmm.
In the Atlantic?
There's this giant amoeba.
Yeah, jellyfish.
What I'm wondering is, are we talking Bermuda Triangle area? Maybe.
It didn't say exactly where it was sailing in the article.
Could that have been some type of living organism? I mean, it looked like.
That's a good question. That's
why.
Yeah.
We saved some of it. It turned out to be flubber.
That's another thing. What's to say some of this stuff is not some kind of life form that can fly?
Right?
Think of that?
That's true. That's
Imagine
true.
that. Yeah.
July 30th, 1909, New Zealand men aboard a dredge reported a boat-shaped UFO that circled all around with two human-like figures visible inside. So sort of a modified wedge or triangular-shaped craft, and that's the color rendering. And it had this.
That's awesome. 1909. They had no movies, no anything, and this is what you're seeing.
Yep.
That's incredible. See, right? Amazing.
Again, man.
Looks
These
like
guys,
an iron.
I didn't know they had stuff
This
this
predates
old.
this predates a lot of it predates the discovery of LSD and a lot of modern psychedelics too. So
well, even if you're schizophrenic or something like that, how would you see something like that when you've never seen anything in the air before? I mean, what would you have to compare it against? You have to have a hell of a imagination, right?
Yeah, the Wright brothers flew in what, like 1903 or 4 or something like that?
December 17th, 1903. Yep.
1903. So this is only 6 years after that first flight, and this is what people are witnessing. I'd imagine it would look pretty weird to them.
I mean,
they probably haven't even heard about flight. Yeah, that's amazing.
Compared to a balloon, though, what I'm saying is that looks like something that, wow, we see flying in the air right now. That's aliens, or that's our, latest whatever.
This one here looks like a lot like that other one that we saw that had the military officer that came out of it too. That it's got that front window in it, and quite a few of these have some sort of a front window, like an old B-52 nose gun or something like that. Yeah, and that to me suggests that that's man-made. Why would aliens need that? That's something that mushrooms.
We need. It does not predate.
And
mushrooms.
I think again, it's the water component too. Think about it.
Opium either. It doesn't predate opium. Opium was, but I don't know how hallucinogenic is opium.
It depends on how much.
I don't know, man. I've taken shrooms before. I never seen no shit like that. All right.
I did something really weird one time when I was on opiates when I had my back surgery, and I was like, how did I end up here? And it was in my own damn house. I'm like, what the holy shit, it was Oxycontin they had me on. I was like, this is 15 years ago. I'm like, how did this happen to me? And the shit just had me completely disoriented and hallucinating. And
this is only 10 years or so after the 1890s airship mystery. See, so if you look at it from that perspective,
I know plenty of people that don't do drugs that have seen stuff too. So.
Exactly. Well, I saw mine in 2014, and I'm telling you that. I was kind of already, someone who embraced this stuff anyway, but if I had not been a believer at all, that would have made me that night.
Well, Walter, you saw yours right by your house, right?
It was right over my house. Yeah.
Right over your house. I remember you telling that story. I watched you tell it on your show. But you said it was small and you almost thought it was a drone, like a man.
I wondered,
somebody operated a drone, but then you said it dropped some material, right?
Yeah. Molten.
I know this story, man. I watched you.
Stuff.
You dropped some material and you went and looked at it, and it was like, what was the material like?
Well, what I found the next day was this extremely fluffy, delicate burned charcoal type. You know how on the 4th of July, when you those things called snakes, they're those carbon things, and how they collapse when you touch them.
I haven't seen them in a while. Yeah,
it was that kind of stuff, but it wasn't though. I mean, this was in the middle of December,
it's like carbon ash. Right?
Yeah, carbon ash. That's exactly what I found along the path of where this thing flew. But but going back to this thing, that's what.
Are you sure it wasn't like what I noticed? A graphene aerogel.
But 10 years after the 1890s airship mystery, someone's seeing this thing here. That's interesting.
Michael, you have to talk to him sometime. Maybe get a drawing of his UFO sighting, or unless Walter drew it. It's pretty.
I drew it. I'll send it to you, Michael. And
cool. Yeah,
put our heads together on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is graphene aerogel.
This one I really like. On November 13th, 1833, a crowd on both the American and Canadian side saw a peculiar square-shaped UFO hover over Niagara Falls for an hour, after which it sped away toward the ocean.
Wow.
So 1833, and then here's our rendering of what it looked like.
Whoa.
Did you ever see the Russian one, the Russian cube that was supposedly over the Kremlin that they said was a reflection now, possibly, or fake, or... It's really bizarre looking. It's like
how about that. Did you guys see that Colorado UFO? Someone posted this earlier today. Let me bring it up. It was on I got it on Twitter here. Let me bring it up real quick. I swear I shared it. Where the heck did it go? I don't even see it now.
Show the drugs. I mean, that's what this is. It's a drug to all of us.
No, there was this cloud that looked like it was something else out in Colorado. It was filmed the other day. It was just on Twitter. And
was it the dome cloud?
It looked like a big block, like a square block of like something that was trying to be invisible or disguise itself as a cloud. It was really weird looking, and now I can't find
1833. I never heard of this 1833.
Here it is.
Yeah, and right over
Yeah,
Niagara Falls
I want all
too.
this
That's interesting.
pre-1900 stuff now. I want.
Here, check
like
this out.
Oh,
Holy
wow.
smokes, that's wild. And that's actual photo as far as
It's
you know?
actual photos driving down the road and seeing this like.
Well, you know, that's weird, isn't it?
Now, doesn't that make you wonder if it's not some type of, you know, you were talking about the dirigible type, you know, the really high tech current dirigible stuff. Like, it makes you wonder if, like you said, it's either something reflective that's reflecting the other clouds, or if now, did the witness say it looked reflective, like that was on a flat surface, or could they have had some type of cloaking or camouflaging technology that causes the condensation to form on the outside of this thing? I wonder.
Yeah, but you know what, Walter? What's amazing? It's got 4 90-degree angles on it. I mean,
Yeah.
how on earth? And look how much more dense and darker it looks in there. It looks like it's cloaking something, doesn't it?
It really does.
I think so.
That's wild.
Holy
Yeah.
shit!
That was posted. That was posted August 2nd, 2021.
I would
That
have
would
to
be my
stop
guess.
and get out of my car and wait till that thing dispersed. You know, I'd keep filming it.
I did get a video of it. I'm surprised he didn't, man. I wouldn't have.
It's a
whatever I had to
completely
do.
different color than anything else in the sky. It's a different gray. See that? Everything else is a blue tone to it. That's a deep kind of gray. That's wild. And
So
there's
the
no
technologies
causing that. Nothing. That is in the sky, whatever the hell that is.
So they
It's
have
not evaporation in the window.
materials like that and ways that they can create this. So there's these materials that change the refractive index, and this happens also in temperature inversion in an effect called fata morgana. Sometimes,
Happens in China a lot.
Oh,
what can happen is like a distant object can look like ships will look like they're floating,
right?
And you know
it's called the Flying Dutchman effect.
I wanted to say something real quick. One of the biggest UFO cases ever is the UFO in Turkey that they were filming night after night after night. When I saw this ship, I thought, man, you know, at nighttime, that UFO in Turkey always looked like it was up above the water. Well, guess what? It probably wasn't. Remember Dr. Roger Lear and them went over there and they literally took pictures of this thing and filmed it. It made me think that is a ship just out at sea, not an alien spaceship. Out over the Mediterranean or whatever that is. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The UFO over Turkey that was really famous in 2008.
Yeah, when you mentioned Roger Lear going over there, that reminded me of it. Yeah.
Yep.
So if you have a blanket of really hot air on the top, right? So the blanket of hot air creates this temperature and it creates like a mirror or a reflection effect.
Okay.
And that's the same thing that they use in. So if you look up using mirage effect to hide objects
during the cold months, the weathery months here where I live, because I'm right at the foot of the San Bernardino Mountains, and we see amazing weird lights in the sky at the mountaintop. Okay, but the thing is, and people get freaked out. What it is, it's the headlights of the cars at what's called the Crestline interchange thing there turn off, and what it is, it's just the headlights of the cars that are reflecting way high in the sky on the clouds. And you know, once you look to where, and you know where to look where the turnoff is, you can totally that's exactly what it is. But it does look, when you first see it, you wonder, ooh, what is this? But it's just car headlights being cast way high in the sky.
Right.
There's a guy in Las Vegas. He runs by the name. His name is Steve, but he has the video channel UFOs Over Las Vegas, right? And I spent like a week banging my head trying to figure out what this guy was seeing. There was these lights and they looked like they were in the sky. You know what they were? I did so much research. Jeremy will remember this. They were literally mountain bikers at nighttime, flying down the hills in Las Vegas. And it took me weeks to figure this out. And when I finally figured it out, the guy, I was like, hey, man, I figured out what you're seeing out there, because he was open to everything. He knew I knew what was going on. He was running a game. And when I figured it out, he got really pissed off and blocked me. Come back with my backup YouTube channel, said, look, these are mountain bikes coming down over this hill. And it did freak you out because the way they were moving, it was so smooth. They're like, well, it can't be people walking, or it can't. And it looked like it was in the sky. Mountain bikers with their lights on. Those lights are very bright, the LEDs. And well, I forget his last name, Steve something. But he had Jaime Malsan and them out at his house.
Yeah, but this is, I was just sorry for the detour. I just wanted to explain, you know, possible effect, what it could explain that. But if it was Fata Morgana or a temperature inversion, there would have to be a distant object that was still a gigantic, what is that, 700-meter long square cube, you know?
Yeah, they showed how a building can cause that in the city if there's lights pushing upwards. There was a UFO that was supposedly on a few months back that was rectangular shaped. It wasn't a cube. It just
this
had a
predates light.
this
This predates electric lights. That wasn't until the 1893 World's Fair, and you know,
yeah,
like
well, it was literally the top of a building that was reflecting off the lights pushing up from the bottom, because that shape was in the shadow, so it was dark among the clouds, and so it left this big giant perfect square. And that was like a month or two ago, and someone figured it out. And I was like, wow, you know, trickery of the eyes, you know. But having a cube like that and it was over there for an hour. How many hours? 2 hours, Mike.
1 hour.
I mean, there's no way to explain that one. I mean, good luck.
The Borg. That's it.
And 1833, for God's sakes, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that was cool though. That it just so happened I stumbled upon this today, and I was like, oh man, that just
awesome.
cued me in to reminded me of it. I wanted to show that because that was still another unexplained one of the day. I actually retweeted this and I tagged Noah and the Weather Channel. I said, what? How do you explain this?
Yeah, I mean, what if that's a ship? You know, I mean, what if that's really a ship?
Yeah.
Right? Gosh, my air conditioner's cold.
Mr. X.
I just want to see.
So May 1967, Mr. X, name withheld by request, of Anderson, South Carolina, was fishing on Hartwell Lake and saw an octagonal UFO apparently pumping up water through a metal tube. Mr. X was near enough to cast and strike the object, but nobody came out, and it soon shot away into the sky. So here we've got this water pumper UFO that I've seen a couple other times. And then here's our full color rendering here.
Oh, wow. Looks like a fountain now, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hexagon, you say, right? What is that? Right, Michael? Hexagon?
Octagonal.
Or octagon, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Is the UFC involved? No. The fighting guys.
My octagon submarine, right?
I mean, that's just, you know, like, again, the water factor, you know. What's that little appendage sticking out there, Michael?
There was a pipe. It was sucking up water or pumping up water or something.
See, that's another thing. What if these things are coming in grabbing hydrogen, or what if they're just coming and getting water? They're re-upping on their water because they got to drink water too, maybe, you know? Do you ever think of that? Just the simplest things. Maybe they need fish or something. I don't know. Hey, let's stop and get some of them sunfish. They taste good to us, you know? Who knows what these aliens like as delicacies?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Do you know if this thing was under the water when he came up, and then like rose up?
I think he just came across this thing and then it flew away later on. But I don't know if it emerged from the bottom, or it doesn't really say how he came across it.
Yeah, it just looks like he was out fishing and just saw the thing and was like, oh, what's that? I better go check that out. And then it flies away. Yeah, that scared the crap out of me.
That's right.
The Russian Navy, the Lake Baikal one, where the guys, the 5 divers go down, and these ETs just killed 2 of them. And I think Russians have said it's a true story. And Baikal is the deepest lake, I think, in the world. Indiana, PA, I know where that is.
Yep, January 24th, 1968, Indiana, Pennsylvania. A witness saw a saucer hovering over a pond with 2 occupants who were apparently repairing their equipment. That's something that we've heard of before too. And this is our full color rendering here. So
check that out. Imagine.
Now I want to say this. My UFO, if you were to just say that the top half of that, the glass part, that was essentially the exact shape of the UFO I saw. Now, because it was night, it looked to me like it was flat bottomed. But I guess because it's at night, it could have been spherical, and because of the illumination on the top half, we weren't able to, because there was another witness, we weren't able to see the bottom half. So theoretically, I guess it could have been spherical, but yeah, this half of this, the top half, except we didn't see people. We saw the rotation of in illumination and something inside fiery, and then the stuff dumping over the side.
What would you say size-wise this was? Because I remember you saying you thought it might have been small, but you couldn't tell.
Looks about 10 to 12 feet in diameter.
I'm asking Walshman. The UFO.
Yeah, probably about on the low end, probably about somewhere between 10 to 15 feet, but it could have been bigger, because I don't know, I could have been wrong on my estimation.
And silent.
How big was this thing supposed to be, Michael?
We don't know. This is just from the original sketch, but could have been 12, 15 feet, a little bit, somewhere in there.
See, that's very similar. Oh wow. 68.
They're just sitting.
And then we've got this one. This came from the David Marler collection. This did not get into his book Triangular UFOs, but this is Little Pudding River, 2012. The story is that primary eyewitness saw this craft basically hover over Little Pudding River. From the bottom of the craft came this clear, transparent tube. It started sucking up water, and then on the exact sides of this clear, transparent tube, it started spraying water back into the lake, into the river. And then there were 3 safety relief valves that popped out from the bottom of this craft, and they started spewing out water too. And on the outer portion, this is actually a triangular shaped craft. When you look at it from top, it has rounded corners. There is a red light that was moving back and forth, and then there were 3 white colored orbs that were circling this entire craft. And this thing was making a sound like a washing machine. That's what this thing sounded like. And it repeated this cycle a few times before it flew away. Here is the actual drawing I put together based on his original sketch. And you can see these safety relief valves. I've got arrows showing you the direction of the water, and then right near the side walls of the tube, the exhaust water being sprayed back down. So this is another one of these water pumper UFO cases.
So it was a sheriff with a camera that saw it, but he didn't get the picture.
Well, it was there for 15 minutes, long enough for the primary eyewitness to get the sheriff, and he came back. No, they were going to take a photograph, but they didn't get there just in time to get that.
Almost 200 feet wide. Think about that.
Yep.
That's almost a football
180
field.
feet. Yep.
It's huge.
They're either flushing like the water tanks, so they're cleaning out their system, or what I was thinking too is they could be removing fuel from the water. So certain amounts of regular water, pond water, seawater contains a certain amount of heavy water, which is tritium or deuterium. So it's quite possible that they could be filtering out the water to remove the deuterium or tritium.
Separating the oxygen, the hydrogen.
Well, this is heavy hydrogen. It's hydrogen with an extra neutron or 2 extra neutrons. Yep, deuterium and tritium. You can
pull that out of heavy water.
It's still hydrogen. It's hydrogen is heavy water. It's called instead of hydrogen dioxide, it's deuterium oxide.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right, we'll move on here. So let's go back to this one. Okay, so got to cover this, right? 2004 USS Nimitz Tic Tac UFO. So this is 2004. And what I thought, let's go back into the historical cases. Let's pull out anything that mimics the form, fit, and function of what the naval pilots saw in 2004, because they said that in the high definition footage, they could see prongs and protrusions sticking out of this craft. So I dug down into the archives, and we came up with this one. This is another Autobinder report. March 1967, Dawn Anderson of Wycombe, Pennsylvania, in daylight saw a gigantic Zeppelin hanging motionless among clouds with 6 strange booms on its top, almost identical to the 2004 high-definition TikTok footage. Had these same prongs sticking out of the craft. Here it is in 1967.
right near the Philadelphia shipping yard. Remember, 24 miles.
So they call this a Zeppelin hanging, like a hanging one. Then it wasn't moving fast like the Tic Tac allegedly
I
was.
don't think
guess.
it was moving fast.
Yeah. Still has those appendages on the bottom though, the little
It
feet.
was right above the above the river.
This is like the first generation, you know.
Yeah.
They've
Don't you
developed
have another
quite a bit.
picture of this, Michael? I have the other one, the drawing.
Yeah, I got the other one. And you can see here that she also said it had rivets fastening the whole thing together.
Yeah,
And that's the technical drawing for that.
A fuel tank.
And then we'll do a full color rendering. That's the full color rendering of it here.
Again, the Naval Shipbuilding Yard in Philly is 22 miles south of this, which I found really interesting. And in '67, that would have been booming.
Mm-hmm. Well, gentlemen, we can go as long as you want to, but whenever you want to wrap up.
3 hours. 3 hours now, man. So we've gotten another super chat. TL Tulare Lake near Lemoore Naval Air Station. Victor Wag says that the TL could have stood for on that other case.
Wow,
okay.
I didn't even see that comment. I don't know why. So he said, Alien Scientist, best UAP, UFO, USO content on YouTube. No bull. Trying my best, trying to get some good content for you all, and epic episode, man. This was crazy. Just a ton of great information you shared with us, Michael. And even though some of the stuff there was a few cases that were repeat, I didn't mind. I don't think the audience did either, even though they had a little deja vu.
My friend Simply Krista's out there. Hey, girl.
It's good. Thomas Fessler in there, you know. Thank you for joining us, man. And Gray Troll, Freedom Fighter, Wally Tango Foxtrot, Nixa, Vancouver guy, DKG Customs, trolling up the chat. Good. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And DRB Rider, Sleeve Garnish. Yeah, man. Thank you all for joining in. Solar Warden.
Marshall, Solar Warden.
All you guys. Yeah,
I'm Solar Marshall, but I'm Dan.
Children, J Bench, Dark Sky Files. Thank you, Jack Hetfield. Yeah, man. Thank you all guys for joining us in the live. Mike Turber. Yeah, we got to get Mike Turber on soon, man. I talked to him about it. Leslie Sylvan. Again, thank you so much for joining. Angela Betts. Ack. Mars Invades. Advocates for Peace. There you go. Good job, guys. Thank you so much for your support, and of course Victor Wag for those super chats too as well. So take care, guys. We're gonna wrap it up for now, and then I'm gonna post the StreamYard link in the chat. So I don't know how many we can fit in here, but we're gonna we'll open it up for a little general chat, I guess, behind the scenes. If you guys want to join in.
All the stars that were out there. You had Dr. Greer. You had Jeremy.
I know, right?
Swung by.
It's like too many people for me to post this. I don't even know if I should post the link, man. I won't be able to let anybody in. Well, it's just gonna fill up so damn quick.
You know, a couple people come in.
Yeah, we'll have a couple people and try it. If you don't get in right away, try in a little bit because we'll rotate some people out.
They'll just threaten to kill us like they always do. All right.
So there's the link, guys. We'll see you later, man. Thanks for your support, and we'll do another one of these soon. I think every Saturday night we're gonna start doing something with this crew, man. I'll figure something out.
Sounds good.
This has been good. Thanks for joining. Night, everyone. Hope to see you